September's energy is just around the corner and it feels exact, strategic, and incredibly potent. With two major eclipses on the horizon and some beautifully exalted planets, the universe is not only handing us a toolkit for making clear, smart, and intentional decisions, but it's also giving us rich opportunities to take calculated and strategic action with our ideas. This is the type of astrology that is going to bring massive turning points or plot twists, and trust me when I say that you're going to feel it. And so here is the September 2025 astrology forecast. Whoosh! And in this video, I'll be going over kind of the cosmic energy that will be swirling around the air in the month of September and how this may affect you and your life's path. But here's the difference. I'm not just going to be looking at the forecast based on your rising sign. I will be covering every major placement in your birth chart, translating these astrological patterns into grounded yet actionable insight that is personalized for you, my cute little viewer. And as you can see by the monster list of timestamps I have in the description, this is going to go deep because my mission is to give you a multi-layered understanding of the month ahead, one that bridges astrology's complex nature with real-world application. Rising sign forecasts are powerful, do not get me wrong, but by exploring your sun, your moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc., we can uncover a far richer picture for how these energies may show up for you. The rising sign forecast is designed to show you the areas of your life being affected by the cosmic happenings of September, while the planetary forecast for everything else gives you insight into the energy that the planet will be experiencing, which can give a deep clue into the psychology or the energy levels and focuses you can expect so that you know what to expect both internally and externally in terms of all the events, as well as unlock opportunities tied to these events. And if you love deep dives that blend astrology insight with real-world tips and tricks, please give this video a like and subscribe. It would mean the absolute world to me, but it signals to both the algorithm and the universe that this type of content is your jam. And obviously, it lets me know that the content is helpful. And so we'll start with September's overarching transits so that you can understand kind of like the cosmic weather. This is kind of like a weather forecast that we're going to be navigating together. This is kind of important for getting the background for the transits, but then we will zoom in on all individual placements so that you can see exactly where these energies will meet with your energetic blueprint. And so now there's a siren. Oh, wait. This is taking forever. We're not ready till the siren ends. I live in a city, if you can't tell. And so now, let's get into the forecast in 3, 2, 1, go. Starting off the month on September 1st, we have Saturn, which is the planet of responsibility and reality checks, re-entering into the boundless spiritual or mystical waters of Pisces. Since this is a retrograde, this isn't about building something new. It's about reviewing what's already there and refining it. And so the core vibe here is the quiet crumbling of any structures in your life that lack real soul or real depth or real meaning. In practice, for example, this could be you looking at your stable, sensible career and suddenly feeling like its spiritual emptiness is really weighing over you. Or this could apply to anything you can do. It could be romance. Maybe you feel an emptiness, or within your pursuits of like education, or maybe even your pursuits of your contributions to society. It'll depend on your rising sign. And it's not just a bad mood necessarily. It's a deep realization that the ladder that you've been climbing is leaning against the wrong wall. But this could pop up more subtly. You could feel a sudden urge to go through old boxes, not just to clean, but because those objects feel emotionally heavy to you. And so letting them go feels like a spiritual cleanse of sorts that you didn't know you needed. And you're being asked, does this commitment or this boundary that I'm setting, does it truly resonate with my spirit? It's less about the results and more about how it resonates with you. And now I do have a video on this retrograde linked in the card if you want want more information on this transit. But now let's move on to September 2nd with Mercury in Virgo making a square to Uranus and Gemini. And so get ready for a mental jolt because this transit is like having your perfectly organized or meal prepped or scheduled week, which is represented by Mercury in Virgo. Maybe you have a plan and it gets completely short-circuited by a sudden, brilliant, or chaotic idea that sounds more appealing, represented by Uranus and Gemini. Maybe you have everything planned or laid out 1 minute and then a text lands within that last minute that completely derails your plans. Maybe it's like a last minute ticket to a concert or a wild offer for a spontaneous road trip, something that's more enticing than what you already have planned. And so the tension is that jarring feeling of your perfect plan being shattered, but the breakthrough is realizing that maybe a little bit of chaos is exactly what you're looking for. But there's also kind of like the risk of maybe your chaos kind of makes you feel uncentered. Maybe you think that because you kind of want to go the more spontaneous route, that something about the order in your life will be kind of derailed. And so the universe is throwing a wrench in your system to show you a more exciting path. And so it's just about balance for this aspect. And then moving on to September 5th, we have Mars in Libra making a square to Jupiter in Cancer. And this is kind of like the classic heart versus head dilemma, because your drive to be fair or to keep the peace with Mars and Libra will be clashing with a huge emotionally generous impulse with Jupiter in Cancer. And so the tension is between what feels right and what feels fair. And this is just an example. Maybe, for instance, you have a friend or a family that texts you completely overwhelmed and asks you to do a favor for them just as you finally start having free time within your schedule. And so the big nurturing or loving part of you with Jupiter and Cancer wants to scream yes immediately, but the part of you that needs balance and fairness to yourself feels a little bit of powerful resistance. And so acting on that generous impulse without thinking could lead to resentment, forcing you to learn how to be supportive without completely sacrificing your own well-being is completely necessary. This could also look like maybe you have something that you're passionate about that you want to pursue, with passion being represented by Jupiter in Cancer. But there's something about maybe your daily obligations or, the way that you need to take action to achieve this goal that is kind of out of reach at this time. Maybe, for example, you want to switch careers, but you need to get a certification first, or maybe you need to keep your job currently because you don't have enough money to make the switch yet. Take what resonates with that, but there's definitely sort of this push and pull between what you want to go for and what you need to do for the sake of balance. And so take what resonates with that. And then moving on to the 6th, though, we have Uranus going retrograde in the sign of Gemini. And so those external shocks and aha moments that we've been having from Uranus are now turning a little bit inward. This retrograde is all about getting new information. It's about finally processing and integrating the game-changing ideas that you've already encountered. You might find yourself thinking back to a movie that you saw months ago, and suddenly its message just clicks and reframes a problem that you're facing today. This is happening to me a lot already, because with Uranus and Gemini, you kind of get these sudden insights or aha moments, or you see something from a new perspective. And maybe with it direct, it's more outward. Now it's going to turn more inward. Maybe it's going to be about yourself. And so you could also feel an urge to change how you communicate. This is another way this can play out. Maybe you realize that your texting style or your talking style is a little too blunt, and you internally rewire your relationship with how you communicate or how you think from within. You could also reevaluate your thought patterns. Maybe you realize that there are thought patterns that are hindering you from making progress. And so another way this could play out is maybe you work to correct those. And so it seems a little bit scary when Uranus goes into retrograde, because people like to make Uranus to be this big beast that's going to, destroy our lives from the ground up because it's so unexpected and shocking. But with a retrograde, it will be more internally. And sometimes destruction is a good thing. And then moving on to September 7th, though, we have the full moon and lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. And this is a big one. I'll be releasing a separate eclipse video coming out next week, hint, hint, both with the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse more in detail, but to summarize, we have a major emotional and spiritual release point at this time, amplified by a sense of almost fatedness, as the moon is right next to the north node when this is happening. And this eclipse is designed to wash away old patterns that you've been holding on to for good. And with support from Jupiter and Cancer at this time, the release should feel more like a blessing than a loss. This is the kind of energy where an old grudge that you've been gripping onto simply dissolves. You wake up and realize it has no more power over you. It can bring a deep moment of deep forgiveness, whether for yourself or for someone else, that feels like it's coming from a higher place, helping you to understand the why behind a past pain so that you can finally let it go and move on to build better things once the solar eclipse happens in Virgo. And now we're going to move forward a little bit because on September 16th, we're going to have Mars in Libra making an opposition to Chiron in Aries. And this aspect can sting a little bit. Maybe your efforts to be diplomatic and fair to others will directly poke at your deepest personal wound around your own right to exist and to assert yourself as you are with Chiron and Aries. And so this is just an example, but maybe at a family dinner, you play the peacemaker, smoothing over a tense conversation to keep everybody else comfortable. And you pull it off successfully, but on the drive home, you feel that familiar hollow ache. And so by creating external harmony, maybe you've completely silenced your own feelings and opinions, triggering that core wound of feeling invisible or like your needs don't matter. And so the summary is there may be something that you're sacrificing for the sake of peace, but you're really holding back your true opinion. And so this is a time to sort of meet that balance from expressing yourself or your opinion or your desires in a very balanced way, while also not neglecting your needs at the same time. And then moving on one day later to September 17th, we will be having Mercury in Virgo making an opposition to Saturn in Pisces. This aspect, this is a really silly metaphor, but I kind of just thought of it. It's like nailing Jello to a wall. It just doesn't work and it leaves a mess. And so your practical, logical, or detail-oriented mind or your plans may slam a wall of frustrating, intangible resistance. Maybe you have all the facts, the data points, and a well-researched argument for why a change needs to be made, or you have the plan to execute a change in your life, but the response you get, or sort of like the blowback that you get, is a vague, oh, I don't really feel it, or the timing feels off, or maybe there's like vague things that block you from executing what it is that you want, which could absolutely drive you mad. But this transit is a test of your patience. It asks you to find a way to have faith, even when logic fails you. And then we also, one day later, but kind of at the same time, because, you know, these transits last a few days, but also they're pretty connected, especially when it's conjunctions. But we have Mercury in Libra opposing with Neptune in Aries. And so have you ever had a conversation to clear the air only to realize later that you and the other person heard two completely different things? Or have you ever sort of like understood something with someone else, but then when you ask them what they think, you can just tell that there's not really a mutual understanding of what's even going on? That's kind of like this transit. And so your attempt at a clear, balanced diplomatic communication or piece of information that you're digesting may get lost in the fog of idealism, projection, or just plain old misunderstandings. Maybe you and another person might leave a talk thinking you're on the same page, but in reality, you just heard what you wanted to hear. Or maybe you leave work thinking, okay, me and my boss know exactly what's going on, but you two have two completely different understandings of what happened. And so there's like kind of like the idealized version of someone's intent and then like the reality of it. And so it's just a good time to evaluate any of your interpretations or any of your understandings with follow-up questions. Make sure you understand things clearly. If you don't know how to ask something clearly, my trick, I have a Mercury in Virgo, so I kind of worry about this a lot, but you need to spell things out in second grade terms to make sure that you have the same understanding. And then moving on to September 19th, we have Venus and Virgo making a square to Uranus and Gemini. There's a lot of Virgo going on. And as a result, there's a lot of squares to Uranus and Gemini. And so for this one, maybe your desire for practical or reliable or service-oriented love or passions or expressions of harmony may get zapped by a sudden craving for freedom and novelty with Uranus and Gemini. Maybe in a relationship, for example, you might feel most loved when your partner does helpful things like fixing a leaky faucet or getting you that glass of water when you're thirsty, or just giving you a hug or listening to you. Take what resonates with that. But then suddenly maybe they get a rebellious streak and become unreliable or disrupting the very stability that you cherish, but not always on purpose. Maybe it's just they're busy or they're sick. And this can also kind of look like maybe you're expressing your passions. Maybe you're sort of putting everything together in a very orderly way. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's just like let's say you're editing a video, for example, and your computer crashes, or you're painting a painting and all of a sudden it falls down and all the paint smears. This is like a few ways that this could play out, but also maybe financially, maybe your meticulously planned budget could be thrown into chaos by an unexpected expense that is also a wild opportunity, like a last minute flight deal to a place that you've always dreamed of visiting. And so this doesn't always have to play out bad. Maybe the disruption is a good thing, like that piece of art that I talked about, for example. Maybe like the smear when it fell off the wall actually looks pretty good. Or maybe your partner kind of doing something different. Maybe it's different in a good way. And so it can play out a lot of ways. It depends on your rising sign. And then moving on to September 21st, we will be having the sun in Virgo, and this will be opposing with Saturn in Pisces, but we also have the solar eclipse in Virgo at this time. This is a huge deal, as you know, and this will be at 29 degrees, which is the anaretic degree. It's the degree of culminations. It's kind of like when the movie is ending and you kind of get that swell in your heart because everything is coming together, whether it's a sad movie and it's kind of like, oh, everything came together, but that was beautifully sad, or if everything came together and it was happy. It could be different for everybody. Point is, it's a monumental day because your core identity and purpose are being directly challenged by a heavy sense of duty and doubt with the opposition to Saturn and Pisces. And this is all happening during a powerful new beginning seeded by a solar eclipse. This new path is literally born from that tension. And so, for example, maybe you lose a job that you've had just to pay the bills. And that initial feeling is failure, but the forced ending pushes you to finally launch that online project or that other career path that you've been dreaming about with the new moon and eclipse in Virgo. Or it's like maybe a relationship ends, but it opens the door for a better one. Or maybe, let's say, for example, it's just internal. There's like a part of you that kind of just switches off all of a sudden. And maybe you start mourning that part of yourself. Like maybe you don't like a hobby anymore or a thought pattern anymore, but it pushes you to something better. But thanks to the supportive grand trine happening to the eclipse at this time, you might find unexpected support from either like other people or an online community or society even, or your friends or your family, which is setting you on a scarier but far more authentic path. And this support may encourage you if you use it correctly. And like I said earlier, I'll have a deeper forecast for this transit coming up within the next week or so. But for now, I'll leave you with that. And then let's move on to September 22nd with Mars entering Scorpio, but also the sun will be entering Libra on the same day. We have two planetary shifts on this day. First, our collective drive with Mars moves into the deep investigative sign of Scorpio. So we're no longer content with surface level things. It's a time to sort of, instead of trying to keep the peace and acting on sense of balance, it's a time to get real about our goals and find a way to strategically execute them. And at the same time, our identity, which is represented by our sun, will move into the balanced, focused sign of Libra. There's something about you that wants to maintain this balance or diplomacy when you act, but you don't want to be bulldozed over, or you don't want to sacrifice your goals anymore. So because Mars in Scorpio and the sun in Libra are happening at the same same time, which by the way, I have this natally. There's your fun fact for the day. I have a Libra sun and a Mars in Scorpio. It's almost like you need to be diplomatic when you approach anything, but your diplomacy doesn't mean being bulldozed over. It means acting strategically. It means acting with tact, and it means viciously going after your goals, but not like a bulldozer looking to smash things over, but almost like a musician trying to make the absolute perfect song that resonates with others, but really hits that deep spot. And so it's really a time to sort of balance those two needs. And if there's any time to go after what you want, to chase your dreams and to make connections, to make those dreams happen, it is absolutely with this transit. And so this can kind of last for a while because Mars will be in Scorpio for a bit and the sun will be in Libra for a bit. So this will overarch until the end of the month. Maybe it'll be influenced by the solar eclipse a little bit, but then it'll also arch going into October. And then finally, we will be going into September 24th. I know there's still a week left in September, but a lot of these final transits that I'm discussing will truly have an impact for the rest of the month. But we will be having Mars in Scorpio making a square to Pluto in Aquarius. This is a heavyweight transit. It's a real unstoppable force meets a movable object kind of moment for you. Your intense personal will to control or transform a situation or to really go after something may clash head on with immense impersonal force or societal or technology sort of limitations that really block you from going after what it is that you want. This could look like maybe you methodically save for a down payment on a house, only to have new legislation pass or economic global forces spike interest rate, or there may be like maybe you don't get accepted by the loan because of a new policy. Or this could look like maybe you want to go after your dreams with an online business and then a new bill or something outside of your control makes it a lot harder to do so. And this limitation didn't exist before, but why does this exist now? It's kind of like I've seen a lot of stories of people wanting to go to like med school or law school in the US, but a lot of the things that are being passed in the big beautiful bill are going to make it really hard for people to get loans. That is a really good example of this transit. And so you may feel powerless at this time, but it's a reality check that shows us the limits of our individual will against the great tides of the collective. And the way to kind of like overcome this is to learn, why am I trying to achieve this goal? What is it that I'm trying to get out of this goal? And then find not only other ways to achieve this goal, but do so strategically. Think outside the box. Do so with tact. Evaluate your options and be willing to pivot if you have to. And so don't let anything discourage you, even societal limitations. And trust me, with all of the trines and sextiles happening to generational planets at the time of this transit, you will be supported in your pivot or your rethinking of a strategy because those opportunities to pivot should be presented to you. And that's kind of like the summary of this month, because this month is a big one for not only pivoting and realizing your dreams, but actually taking action. It is a month of taking action and actually going after what it is that we want, because not only will we receive the insight to do so, but also the tools. And so please go down to the description. Look for the timestamps of your rising sign, your sun, your moon, your Mercury, because your rising sign forecast will give you insight into the areas of life that will be a focus this month. And then the rest of the forecasts that I've provided will give you insight into your psychology, your psyche, and kind of like maybe your mental wiring or your energy levels so that you can be fully prepared to make the most out of this month. For my Aries Rising, September demands a strategic retreat, which may feel totally backwards to your action-oriented nature. The focus is on the deep internal work that clears the slate for a more efficient and soul-aligned daily life. This is about learning that the most powerful move is sometimes no move at all, but rather intentional rest. Around early September, the month begins with a deep need for release. The full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th illuminates your 12th house of the subconscious and endings, forcing a surrender of sorts. This isn't just about feeling tired, it's about a soul-level exhaustion designed designed to dissolve a lingering anxiety or a pattern of self-sabotage or a hidden burden that you've carried for others. For an initiator like you, this might manifest as a project suddenly stalling or feeling an uncharacteristic lack of motivation. This is your cosmic cue to stop pushing. At the same time, Mercury squaring Uranus can deliver an out-of-the-blue insight that disrupts your schedule but clarifies your path in some way. An unexpected conversation could reveal a flaw in your daily system, prompting a radical change. And then around mid-September, the tension between your personal needs and your relationships will come into sharp focus. With Mars in your 7th house of partnership, your drive is directed towards collaboration and keeping the peace. However, around the 16th, this directly opposes Chiron in your 1st house, highlighting your core wound around self-assertion. You might find yourself agreeing to a partner's plan or a colleague's request or a friend's idea only to feel a deep sense of resentment because your own needs were ignored. It's the classic Aries dilemma. You want to lead or initiate, or you want to act in some way, even if you consider yourself lazy, you are like this, but you also want harmony. The lesson is learning that true partnership doesn't require self-abandonment. And then late September, the internal work you've done will culminate in a major external reset, because the solar eclipse on the 21st in your 6th house of work and wellness is a fated new beginning for your daily reality. This isn't just about starting a new diet or adopting a new routine. It's about architecting an entire operating system for your life that proactively manages your energy. This could be creating a non-negotiable morning routine that protects your peace, or implementing a new project management system that prevents burnout. As Mars enters Scorpio as well, your focus shifts to the deeper currents of shared finances or intimacy, or the parts of life that you can't really control, demanding truth and transformation in your closest bonds or in the things that you connect with. And so in conclusion, September is a month of sacred surrender. You're being asked to clear out the invisible static, whether it's chronic stress, mental overload, or energetic debts, so that you can build a life that truly sustains your fire. The breakthroughs you seek in your work and health will not come from more effort, but will come from creating more space. And so honor your body's need for rest as a non-negotiable foundation for this next chapter. For my Taurus risings, this month is about building a life that is not only stable, but also actually joyful. You're being challenged to treat your creativity, pleasure, and self-expression with the same seriousness you apply to your finances. The universe is asking you to build tangible, lasting structure around what makes your heart sing. In early September, you begin the month feeling the weight of your social and future-oriented goals, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th is in your 11th house of community, and it brings a necessary release. You may consciously uncouple from a friend or a friend group or a professional network or a long-held dream that has become more of an obligation rather than an inspiration, or you may become more tied to, let's say, a social media pursuit or a group that really gives you a sense of like pleasure and joy. Because for a security focused sign like you, this can feel unsettling letting things go, but it's freeing up vital energy. Simultaneously, maybe an unexpected impulse around your finances or your thoughts with Mercury square Uranus could strike. This might be a sudden idea to invest in a creative hobby or a spontaneous purchase that feels like an investment in your own happiness. And so don't dismiss these urges. They are clues to your new value system. And then mid-September, a subtle friction builds between your daily duties and your inner world. Serious conversations at work or about your health routines with Mercury opposite Saturn may feel a little bit draining, making it hard to connect with your joy. You might find your practical, methodical approach is frustrated by vague instructions or a lack of clear direction from others, especially when it comes to like your group settings. This is a test of your patience and a prompt to focus on what you can concretely control for your own contribution and for your own well-being. And then around late September, here comes the cosmic green light, because the powerful solar eclipse on the 21st lands in your 5th house of creativity, romance, and authentic self-expression. This is a potent new beginning, seeding a project or a romance, if you're into that, or a venture that feels deeply aligned with your core values. For you, this isn't a fleeting feeling. It's It's about creating something real and beautiful that could grow into a legacy. And as Mars enters your opposite sign of Scorpio, your attention shifts decisively to one-on-one partnerships, infusing them with a new intensity and a demand for deep honesty. And so September is a masterclass in valuing your own joy. You are learning that what feels good is not frivolous. It is essential fuel for your stable and abundant life. Because by daring to release social expectations and invest time and resources into your passions, you build a foundation of authentic self-worth. And so let your heart, not just your head, guide your investments this month. For my Gemini risings, get ready for a foundational reset. This month rearranges the very pillars of your life, your career, and your home. You are being pushed to release a public image that no longer aligns with your private truth and to build a career or goals or a legacy that genuinely nurtures your emotional well-being. Starting in early September, the month opens up with a major career climax because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th is at the top of your chart in your 10th house of profession and public life, which brings a fated peak or an ending. You might leave a job or step down from a leadership role or simply release a long-held ambition that you realize was more about your ego than feeding your soul. For a mentally agile sign like you, this release is likely tied to information or a new perspective that completely shifts your goals in some way. And then with Uranus and Gemini stationing retrograde in your first house, this is going to prompt a very sudden internal shift, almost like an aha moment about who you are that makes an old career path or an old path in general feel totally wrong to you. And so around mid-September, though, the tension between play and responsibility will become more palpable. Your desire to have fun, create, and express yourself with Mars transiting your 5th may feel at odds with serious demands of your home and family life, with Mercury opposite Saturn in your 4th house and your 10th house respectively. And so you might struggle to articulate your needs within your family or even within yourself or your own emotional self, or maybe your plans for home improvement could hit a bureaucratic or a structural snag. This friction is a clear signal revealing exactly where your work-life balance needs radical adjustment, or it could be the reverse. Maybe you can't relax at home because work is too stressful, or maybe you can't focus on work because home is too stressful. So take what resonates. And then late September is when everything comes sort of like home, if that makes sense, because the massive solar eclipse on the 21st will be activating your 4th house, seeding in a deep new beginning. This could manifest as a physical move, maybe a significant shift in your family dynamics, or most powerfully, the creation of a new inner landscape of security and peace. And this new foundation is a direct result of the career changes that you've been navigating. And so as Mars moves into Scorpio, though, your drive will be shifting to your 6th house, demanding you to tackle a health issue or a work problem with strategic focus and intensity. And so in conclusion, September is a deep rebalancing act because you are fundamentally redesigning your life to ensure that your public achievements are built on a solid private foundation. And for a Gemini rising whose mind is often out in the world, this is a call to come home to yourself. Listen to your emotional needs as your most reliable compass. A career that doesn't feel good in your gut is no longer a viable option. For my Cancer risings, this month is a massive mental and spiritual upgrade. You are being called to dissolve limiting beliefs and outdated philosophies to create space for a more authentic, grounded, and emotionally honest way of communicating your truth to the world. Starting in early September, the month kicks off by stretching your mental horizons because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th in your 9th house of higher beliefs or going out of your comfort zone or learning or travel, whatever resonates with the 9th house, helps you to release maybe a rigid ideology or a spiritual dogma or a pessimistic worldview that's been keeping your world small. For a creature of comfort like you, changing a core belief can feel threatening, but this eclipse is a gentle, watery release. With expansive Jupiter still in your 1st house, you're feeling generous and optimistic, but this may clash with your attempts to maintain diplomatic communication with family or neighbors, in some way with Mars and Libra, making a square to Jupiter at the beginning of the month. And this will be pushing you to speak a larger, more vulnerable truth at this time in however way that resonates with you. And then going into mid-September, your focus shifts into how your private feelings connect to your public life. A drive to act from your emotional core with Mars in your fourth directly triggers your wound around career and public recognition, with Chiron transiting the 10th house. You might feel that the hard work that you do behind the scenes goes completely unseen, or that your professional achievements feel hollow and disconnected from your true self. This is a call to find validation from within, celebrating your natural private victories and aligning your public path to what truly fuels your soul. It's not about just trying to achieve success, which I know you're trying to do because you have an Aries midheaven. It's about really going with what fuels your fire. And then in late September, a new voice is going to be born for you, because the powerful solar eclipse on the 21st will be landing in your third house of communication and learning, which seeds a whole new mindset. This could manifest as signing up for a course that changes your perspective, or starting a blog or a podcast to share your story, or maybe finally finding the precise and compassionate words for a crucial conversation. Your thoughts gain structure and purpose at this time, and to cap it off, Mars enters Scorpio, igniting your fifth house of creativity, romance, and joy with passion and purpose, because your newfound voice wants to be expressed creatively, and this might be the time when you figure out how to do that. And so in conclusion, you are changing your mind to change the world. September is about courageously examining your beliefs that you've inherited and replacing them with personal philosophy forged from experience and intuition. The goal is to build a worldview you don't just think about, but one that you can live, breathe, and speak with heartfelt confidence. For my Leo rising, September is a masterclass in authentic power and value. You are diving deep into the often unseen realms of your psyche and finances to clear out old debts, both literal and energetic. This process is about building a foundation of unshakable self-worth that is reflected in, but not dependent on, your material world. Starting in early September, the month plunges you into the deep end. I hate to say it, I'm a Leo rising too, so I'm just crossing my fingers, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th will be activating our 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, and psychological debts. Maybe a fated release could occur here. You may pay off a significant loan. You could end a business partnership that felt energetically draining, or maybe you'll have a deeply honest conversation that releases a long-held resentment. Take what resonates with that, or you could just do some successful shadow work. And for a radiant sign like you, this journey into the shadows can be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's where you reclaim immense power. This frees up vital energy, allowing you to shine more brightly. And then moving on to mid-September, the tension is between what you say and what you truly believe, because your drive to communicate and connect with your local environment, with Mars transiting your third house, may trigger your wound around your worldview or your higher beliefs, with Chiron transiting your 9th house. I feel this because I started making astrology content with Chiron transiting my 9th, and sometimes I'm like, obviously I believe in it, but sometimes I'm like, am I right? And I even question myself sometimes. And so you might feel that your grand heartfelt ideas are met with petty criticism, or that you struggle to articulate your bigger vision in some way. Financially, trying to finalize contracts or agreements could be met with frustrating delays and confusing terms as well, with Mercury opposite Saturn in your 2nd and 8th houses. And so the key is to trust your own regal authority and not let external confusion diminish your vision. And then late September is when a new era of abundance begins, because on the 21st, the solar eclipse will be landing in your 2nd house of worth. This seed is a powerful new chapter in how you provide for yourself and how you value your unique creative talents. This could manifest as a new income stream, woohoo, or a significant raise, or a deep internal shift where you finally start charging what you're worth, or you could just realize what you're worth. And as the month ends with Mars moving into Scorpio, this will bring a focused and powerful drive to your 4th house of home and emotional foundations. And so this month is about reclaiming your throne from the inside out, because by courageously facing what you owe and what is owed to you, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, and financially, you create the space for true sustainable abundance. This journey teaches you that your value is inherent and non-negotiable. And so own your worth like the royalty you are, and watch as the material world rearranges itself to match. For my Virgo risings, this is your personal renaissance. It's truly a big month for you, and you probably know why, but it's less of a party and more of a deep recalibration of your identity. You are being called to integrate the lessons from your closest relationships and step into a new, more authentic version of yourself. This is about seeing yourself with the same clarity you so often offer others. Starting in early September, the month opens with a spotlight on your significant others or your partnerships. It could be platonic, romantic, take what resonates with that, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th in your 7th house of partnerships brings a fated peak or release. This isn't just about a potential breakup or about romance. It's a moment of piercing clarity about how you connect with others. The illusions you've held about people or about the patterns in your relationships in general will dissolve. For your analytical nature, trust me though, this is a gift. You finally have all the data you need to make a clear decision about how you show up for others and what you need in return. And then moving on to mid-September, the focus shifts to the delicate balance between your personal values and your shared commitments. Your drive to build your own resources and self-worth, with Mars transiting your 2nd, highlights your deepest wounds around intimacy and vulnerability in some way, with Chiron transiting your 8th house. So perhaps an honest conversation about shared finances or values, or perhaps like a realization about how you're really not acting on your self-worth and how people are stripping you of your energy. This might feel intensely comfortable, but these conversations, whether it's with yourself or with others, is absolutely necessary. This is a cosmic prompt to advocate for your own needs and ensure the energetic give and take in your partnerships is truly balanced and fair, and to ensure that you are valuing yourself how you should. I know a lot of Virgo risings in my life, they're nitpicky. You guys are amazing and truly intelligent. Even if your Mercury's in a debilitated sign, you're all super smart, and you got to realize that at this time. And then going into late September, it's a time for your grand debut, because the massive solar eclipse on the 21st is in your 1st house of self-identity and appearance. This is your cosmic reboot. You are presenting a new, more refined and integrated version of yourself to the world, one that is a direct result of the relationship reckonings from earlier in the month. This could be a new look, a new name, or simply a new way of carrying yourself with quiet confidence. And as September closes, Mars will be entering your 3rd house in Scorpio, making your mind and words incredibly sharp, focused, and persuasive, which will assist you with these solar eclipse changes. And so this month's journey is about self-definition, because by seeing your relationships with clarity, you come to understand yourself more deeply. The powerful new beginning that you are offered is a chance to reintroduce yourself to the world on your own terms, free from the projections of others. And so step into the spotlight. You've done the work and you've earned your place there. For my Libra risings, prepare for a deep spiritual and physical cleanse, because September is about cleaning the decks emotionally, mentally, and within your daily routines. Take what resonates with that to prepare for your season of renewal, because the sun will be entering Libra, as you know, in late September. The work you do in the quiet, unseen spaces of your life will be the foundation for everything that comes next. Starting in early September, the month begins with a focus on your well-being, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th will be activating your 6th house of health, work, daily routines, bringing the fated release of a dysfunctional habit or a soul-draining job or a persistent wellness issue. Because for you, which you are a harmony-seeking sign, this eclipse is designed to remove a source of deep imbalance from your life. Maybe you're giving so much in some area of your life, but your body can't take it and you're not listening to it. And so this is a time to wake up when it comes to that. With assertive Mars in your sign at the same time, you'll feel a surge of personal drive, but this may clash with the emotional demands of your career or your reputation at some time, with Mars squaring Jupiter in your 10th, forcing you to choose between your agenda and whatever it is that you're pursuing in your higher life. It could be something about your job stressing you out, or something about your goals that you need to really assert yourself on. And then around mid-September, the core Libra dilemma comes up. It's the self versus other, and this is front and center, because your personal drive with Mars in your 1st house will directly oppose with Chiron in your 7th house, illuminating your deepest wounds around partnerships, You may find that asserting a personal need or desire feels like a betrayal to a partner, or you may overcompromise to keep the peace, only to feel drained and unseen, or perhaps you feel like a sense of like troubling self-worth when it comes to like your partnerships because you're having struggles maintaining partnerships in the first place. So take what resonates. And so the lesson is that true harmony cannot exist without two whole individuals and one whole individual with yourself, because your needs are not an inconvenience. They are a vital part of the equation, and it is your job to realize that. And then going into late September, the breakthrough happens in silence because the powerful solar eclipse is happening in your 12th house of the subconscious, spirituality, and endings. And this seeds a new beginning in the most private part of your chart. It's you releasing an old ancestral pattern, finding a new spiritual practice that brings you peace, or having a dream that provides a deep insight. So take what resonates, because as the month ends, when Sun enters your sign, your energy is going to return, and Mars is moving into your second house, which is really going to push you to take charge of your life and start building what you deserve. And so you are in a sacred preparation phase. September asks you to retreat, rest, and release so that you can enter the end of the month with a clean slate and a peaceful heart. The most important negotiations of the month are the ones that you have with yourself. And so honor your need for solitude and listen to your intuition, because your grand renewal is just around the corner. For my Scorpio risings, this month is about curating your social life and creative expression with surgical precision. You're being called to release any affiliations that drain your power so that you can pour that potent energy back into the people or the projects or the passions or the causes that make you feel intensely alive. Starting with early September, the month opens up with a focus on your heart's expression, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th is in your 5th house of creativity, romance, self-expression, and this brings a fated release. This could be the end of a romantic affair that lacks depth, the completion of a creative project, or a fundamental shift in what you consider fun. For you, pleasure is never superficial. This eclipse helps you to shed any joyful pursuits that may have become hollow, making space for something more transformative and authentic. And then moving on to mid-September, the energy turns inward, and it turns a little bit complex, not gonna lie, because a quiet subconscious urge to act with Mars transiting your 12th. This causes me bad dreams, by the way, so this could be how it plays out too, but this could trigger your wound around daily work and service with Chiron in your 6th. Maybe you have trouble sleeping, which affects your routines, or vice versa. Maybe your routines are affecting your sleep. You may feel a deep need for rest and retreat, but your to-do list or a sense of duty makes you feel guilty for it. And so this transit can bring hidden frustrations to the surface. Your most strategic move now is to honor your need for solitude. A day spent doing nothing can be so much more productive than a week of forced effort, because it's almost like a slingshot, right? You pull it backwards, and yes, the marble in the slingshot isn't moving forward, but once you let go, boom, it shoots forward faster than you could ever imagine. That was a weird metaphor, but just go with me. And then in late September, a new vision for your future is going to be born, because the massive solar eclipse is going to be landing in your 11th house of community, long-term hopes, seeding a new beginning with you and your dreams, or your tribe, or your friends. Take what resonates. You may find your people, or join a powerful group, or launch a collaborative project that aims for a large-scale transformation. This isn't about casual networking. It's about forging strategic alliances. And as the month ends, your ruler, which is Mars, your traditional ruler, will be entering your sign. You're going to get a lot more energy with Mars in your first. And so your powerful focus and magnetism will return in full force, ready to make this new future into a reality. And so September is about strategic alignment. You are shedding social and creative skins that no longer fit your evolving purpose. And so by discerning who and what is worthy of your energy, you cleared the path for your next chapter of influence. You'll emerge with a clearer vision of your future and the personal power to command it into existence. For my Sagittarius risings, your public and private worlds are undergoing a major renovation. A massive career reboot or something about your goals in some way may be forcing you to get honest about what you need from your home and your emotional foundations to feel truly secure, or maybe there's something you need to get from home in order to pursue your dreams. So take what resonates with that. It can go both ways. This is about building a legacy that is aligned not just with your ambitions, but with your soul's quest for meaning. Starting in early September, the month begins with deep emotional currents because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th will be taking place in your 4th house of home and family, bringing a faded emotional release. This could be a literal move. Maybe it's a conversation that brings closure to an old family issue, or the final release of a childhood pattern that has limited your freedom. And for someone who is very open like you are, Sagittarius Risings, it's about clearing your foundational baggage so that you can travel lighter through the world. And then moving on to mid-September, maybe a tension arises between your social obligations or your dreams in some way within your personal passions. Your drive to connect with your community and your friends, with Mars transiting in the 11th house, or to connect on social media, take what resonates with that, may directly trigger your wound around creative self-expression and feeling seen. You might feel that your unique, joyful spark is often overlooked in favor of like the group's agenda, or maybe you're rejected in some way for your self-expression. And this is a prompt to champion your own creative contributions, even if others don't immediately understand your vision. And then going on to late September, prepare for a professional quantum leap because the massive solar eclipse on the 21st is at the very top of your chart. It's happening in your 10th house of career, public reputation, your role in the world, and this seeds a major new beginning within your professional path. This could be a promotion, the launch of a business, or a deep realization of your true calling, one that feels like a grand adventure. Take what resonates with that because it can play out so many different ways. And as the month ends, Mars will be transiting your 12th house, pulling your energy inward for a necessary period of rest, integration, and strategic planning before your next move. But just a disclaimer, every time Mars transits my 12th house, I get some weird dreams. And so if this is something that resonates with you, you're being called to just like really meditate and assert your energy in proper ways so that you can actually get rest. And so this month teaches that a soaring career requires deep roots. And so by healing your emotional foundations, you create the stability needed to reach new professional heights, or vice versa. This new public chapter that you're beginning is a direct result of the private work that you've done. So good job, Sagittarius Risings. I know you did it even if you didn't confirm it to me. And so embrace this opportunity to build a legacy that is both meaningful and monumental to your life. For my Capricorn Rising, September is here to fundamentally upgrade your mental operating system. You are being pushed to release limiting practical mindsets to make space for a more expansive and meaningful worldview. This is about building a new life philosophy that is sturdy and reliable as the structures that you are known for creating, because Capricorn Risings, even if you consider yourself lazy, you are great at building things that are reliable. Trust me. And then starting in early September, the month opens by clearing out the mental cobwebs of sort because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th will be taking place in your 3rd house of communication and mindset. And this will help you to release an old pattern of thinking, maybe something about your local community or your immediate environment that no longer serves you. And for someone like you, this means letting go of a belief that has become inefficient or just useless in your life. And at the same time, something about your career drive with Mars transiting your 10th house may create tension with the needs of a partner or the needs of others or the needs of coworkers, even with a square to Jupiter in your 7th house. And this will demand you to find a new, more diplomatic strategy for success. And then moving on to mid-September, the classic Capricorn conflict between career and home becomes a little bit sharper because, this is stereotypical, but this is what's going to happen in mid-September because your powerful drive to achieve in your profession with Mars transiting your 10th house directly opposes Chiron in your 4th house, highlighting your deepest wound around family or emotional security in some way. And so you may feel like like every step forward in your career comes at a cost to your inner peace or your family life in some way. Take what resonates with that. Or you might feel like you have to jeopardize your goals for your family, or because you don't think you're worthy of it due to some wounds that you have. And so the universe is asking you to redefine success. An achievement that leaves you feeling empty at home is not a true victory. This is what you need to remember. And then moving on to late September, a new way of thinking is born because the powerful solar eclipse on the 21st will be landing in your ninth house of higher wisdom, travel, and beliefs. Take what resonates with that, seeding in a fated new beginning. This could be the decision to pursue a higher degree, maybe publish your work, or formally adopt a life philosophy that will become the blueprint for your future. For you, this isn't just an idea, it's a new long-term strategy in some way. And so as the month closes, Mars will be firing up your 11th house, driving you to connect with like-minded people, or to connect on social media, or to connect with certain causes for people who share with your vision. And so this is about taking your healed self and then actually doing something that will impact the world with it. I know you're tired, but trust me, you have so much to offer, because September is about trading in your old maps for a new globe of sorts. I'm really proud. I just made that up. But you are letting go of limiting beliefs to embrace a bigger, more integrated wisdom. This journey is about building a personal philosophy that is both inspiring and practical, a foundation upon which you can build your new and next great legacy. And so trust the call to expand your mind, because this is a time where you will begin to see the possibilities for your life. For my Aquarius Risings, this month is a deep recalibration around value and security. You are being called to untangle what is yours from what is others, learning to build a sense of worth and stability that comes from your own intrinsic resources, not just shared ideals or from outside forces. This is all about what you have to offer in the world. Starting in early September, the month is going to kick off with a clear focus on your resources, because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th will be taking place in your 7th house of income and self-worth. And so you might leave a source of income, or you may pay off a debt that's been weighing on your sense of value, or you could release an old attached way of valuing yourself and start valuing yourself. Or perhaps you'll just get more streams of income in some way because you left something else behind in favor of the new. And so this is about grounding your innovative spirit in tangible self-worth. Meanwhile, your desire to expand your worldview with Mars transiting your 9th might create friction with your daily budget or your work schedule in some way, asking for innovative solutions. And the reason that Aquarius risings may struggle sort of with second house matters sometimes is because it is in the sign of Pisces. So you don't really want to put too much value on what you have, but at the same time, you kind of need money to pay your bills, you know? And so this is kind of about finding the balance between what you deserve and what you don't need. And then starting in mid-September, the tension between your big ideas and your everyday communications becomes a little bit clearer. Your drive to pursue a grand forward-thinking ideal with Mars transiting your 9th may trigger your wound around being hurt or misunderstood by your local community, or just even by yourself with Chiron transiting your 3rd. You might feel like your revolutionary concepts are being dismissed with petty practical objections, or maybe there's something about the way you speak, because Aries is in your 3rd house, that you feel is like a little too blunt and people aren't really listening to you because of that. This is kind of like the classic Aquarian challenge. It's bridging the gap between the future you envision and the present reality. Your task is not to argue, but to demonstrate your ideas through application. And remember this, Mars is the ruler of Aries. And so sometimes you gotta prove something by showing it instead of by speaking it. This is something that you can remember. And then in late September, it's a time for deep transformation, because the solar eclipse will be landing in your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, and regeneration. This seeds a new beginning in how you collaborate, merge your energy with others, and how you handle things like loans or grants or inheritances. Take what resonates. And so this is a chance to start fresh, enter into collaborations from a place of solid self-worth rather than need, or a place to truly transform and heal your emotional self from the things that you've been holding on to a little too tightly. And then as the month ends, Mars will be moving to the top of your chart into your 10th house and firing up your career ambitions with unstoppable force. And so this month transforms your relationship with power and security. You are moving from a focus on what you have to a deeper understanding of how you share, collaborate, and create value with others. And so by facing financial and emotional realities with your signature innovative courage, you build a more resilient and powerful foundation for bringing your unique vision into the world. And so I hope that helps my Aquarius risings. Pisces risings, this is a defining month of self-discovery and relational renewal. You are releasing an old, porous version of yourself to embody a new identity with clearer boundaries and greater self-awareness. This personal transformation is the absolute key that unlocks a new chapter in your most important partnerships. Starting in early September, the month begins with a powerful personal release because the full moon lunar eclipse on the 7th is in your sign, lighting up your first house. This is a fated opportunity to dissolve an old identity, perhaps one that was too sacrificial or had absorbed the pain of others. Like perhaps maybe you used to get picked on for being one way, or perhaps there's feelings of shame surrounding some parts of yourself that kind of comes from other people. And then with Saturn also in your sign, this isn't just about dissolving, it's about crystallizing a new, more defined sense of self. You are shedding a skin, which can feel both liberating and intensely vulnerable as you learn who you are without the old narratives. It's like when you scrape your knee and you don't want to like kind of touch the wound because it feels super raw. That's kind of how you might feel from an emotional standpoint. But embrace this change, trust me, because going into mid-September, the focus shifts to the delicate energetic balance of your intimate bonds. Your drive to merge and deepen connections with Mars transiting your 8th house will poke at your core wound around self-worth and personal resources. With Chiron transiting your 2nd, you may feel a sharp tension between what you give away, whether it's emotional or financial, and what you keep to yourself. This is a cosmic call to value your own energy. Learning to set boundaries isn't selfish. For you, it's a crucial act of self-preservation and spiritual integrity. Because you have Aries in your 2nd house, you must act in a way that's protective of yourself, or you risk losing yourself with Libra in your 8th house. And then going into late September, a new relational chapter begins because the solar eclipse on the 21st is landing in your 7th house of partnership, seeding a fated new beginning. This could be a new commitment, a total renewal of an existing one, or a new understanding of what a healthy partnership just looks like to you. This new dynamic is a direct reflection of the personal identity work that you've been doing this month, and I'm so proud of you for doing that, by the way. And as the month ends, Mars moves into your 9th house, firing up your desire to either travel, learn, or explore a new belief system that supports the new you. So take what resonates with that. After you get this charge to sort of stand up for yourself and establish new ideals, this will expand much bigger than you could have ever imagined. And so you cannot have the partnerships you desire without first becoming the person that you are meant to be. This month's journey is a powerful proof of that truth. And so by releasing an outdated version of yourself and embracing a more structured, self-honoring identity, you create the space to attract or redefine a relationship or your idea of relationships that truly sees and supports you. It all starts with you. It is a time to welcome yourself home and to truly embrace who you are at your core. Aries Suns, September tests your sense of self through how you relate to others. With your ruler of Mars in the opposing sign of Libra, your identity feels filtered through the lens of others in some way. You might feel like you have to compromise your core instincts to keep the peace, which can be draining for some people. The main event, though, is mid-month when Mars opposes with Chiron in your sign of Aries. This transit brings a direct confrontation between your actions within a partnership or others and your deepest wound around your right to exist and be yourself. How it can play out is you might finally speak up about an imbalance with a partner or a person, and their reaction pokes at your deepest insecurity, making you question if you were too much. But a tip and trick at this time is to don't shrink back. The goal is to learn how to assert your identity within your interpersonal relationships, not in spite of them, and use this friction to build stronger, more honest connections. Taurus Suns, your identity finds its strength this month through practical, grounded action. With a cluster of planets in your fellow Earth sign of Virgo, including the powerful solar eclipse, your sense of self is nourished by getting your life in order. You'll feel the most like you when you are being useful or refining a skill or creating tangible results. However, your ruler of Venus is in a tense square with Uranus mid-month. This creates friction between your desire for stable, reliable value and a sudden urge for novelty and freedom. And how this can play out is you might be happily budgeting with the Virgo energy going on when a spontaneous opportunity arises that feels both exciting but financially irresponsible. And so find a middle ground this month. Can you build a chaos fund into your budget, or can you find ways to have fun without dipping into your budget? And so your identity is growing by learning to be stable and flexible, not just one or the other. Gemini Suns, your consciousness is undergoing a major rewire this month. With disruptive Uranus in your sign, your identity is already in a long-term process of reinvention. This month, your ruler, which is Mercury, though, will be forming a jarring square to Uranus from the sign of Virgo. This is your detail-oriented mind clashing with your own inner revolutionary. And how this can play out is you could be meticulously planning your week when a brilliant idea from your own subconscious short circuits the whole plan of sorts, leaving you feeling scattered but inspired. You're literally disrupting yourself, but this can be good or bad depending on how careful you are when you're making decisions. And so keep a notebook handy at all times or your phone. The goal isn't to control the brilliant chaos, but to capture it. These sudden downloads are redefining who you are and what you're capable of. Cancer Suns, your sense of self is meant to expand this month, but not without some growing pains. With bountiful Jupiter still in your sign, your core identity is supported by a wave of confidence and optimism. You feel more like you than you have in a long time. However, this expansive energy will be squared by Mars in Libra, creating a tension between your personal growth and your desire for harmony in your life or in relationships. Take what resonates with that. And so how it could play out is you might feel a surge of confidence to pursue a personal goal, but maybe there's some person or some outside force that needs balance and fairness, and this makes you feel guilty for taking up too much space or for going after what you want because you feel inconsiderate, but you really need to consider yourself this month. And so your growth does not diminish others, or it doesn't diminish anything. The trick is to reassure loved ones that your expansion includes them, but your trajectory is non-negotiable. And so don't dim your light to keep the peace. Leo Suns, September is a significant identity check-in for you. As the sun, which is your ruler, moves through Virgo, your sense of self is tied to getting the details right and being of service in some way. This can feel humbling. The main event this month, though, is the solar eclipse in Virgo, which opposes Saturn around the 21st. This is a major test of your confidence. You might feel a heavy sense of doubt or criticism that challenges your innate radiance. And how it can play out is you could be up for a promotion or you could be launching a project, but a wave of imposter syndrome hits hard, making you question your authority. And so a tip and trick at this time is to see this not as a failure, but as a pressure test. Saturn is asking you to build a more durable, mature confidence that isn't reliant on constant praise. Do the work and your inner authority will become unshakable. Virgo Suns, this is your month for a total identity reset. With Sun, Mercury, Venus, and a solar eclipse all in your sign, the universe is shining a massive spotlight on you. Your consciousness is primed for a major upgrade. The solar eclipse on the 21st is your personal new year, a chance to launch a new version of yourself. But the challenge is that this will be opposed by Saturn and Pisces. You'll feel a push and pull between your practical plans and a vague, overwhelming sense of doubt or spiritual fatigue. How it can play out is maybe you have a perfect logical plan to improve your life, but a nagging voice says, "What's the point?" or "I don't really have the energy." But a tip and trick at this time is to integrate. Don't fight, because your plan needs a little bit of soul. The trick is to infuse your practical steps with faith, rest, and compassion for yourself. Libra suns. September is all about rediscovering your personal drive and sense of self, especially within your relationships and how you relate to others. With Mars in your sign for most of the month, you'll feel an uncharacteristic surge of energy and a desire to put your own needs first. This could feel both energizing and deeply uncomfortable. Around the 16th, taking action for yourself will feel like it's directly opposing the needs of others in some way because of the opposition to Chiron and Aries, challenging your identity as the peacemaker. And how this can play out is maybe you finally speak up about an imbalance within a partnership, which, while necessary, could create temporary conflict. But a tip and trick at this time is don't back down. This isn't about starting fights, it's about recalibrating your relationships to be more fair to you. Use I feel statements to express your needs without placing blame, because your vitality gets a major boost when the sun enters your sign on the 22nd, kicking off your season, and this will help you to really reinforce that confidence you've been building throughout the month. Scorpio suns, your identity is being challenged to evolve beyond your individual willpower this month. Your traditional ruler of Mars moves into your sign on the 22nd, giving you a massive surge of focus and personal power. You'll feel potent and driven. However, just 2 days later, Mars will form a hard square to Pluto, which is your modern ruler. This is a heavyweight clash between your personal will and the massive impersonal forces of societal change that could be like blocking your personal will. And so this could play out by maybe you might have a focused personal strategy to achieve a goal only to have it completely blocked out by a systematic issue, whether it's economic changes or new regulations. Take what resonates with that. This may make you feel powerless, but a tip and trick at this time is that this is a lesson on the limits of control. Your identity is evolving from I can force this to I can skillfully navigate this. The trick is to pivot and work with the larger forces, not against them. Sagittarius suns, your sense of self is being tested through the lens of social harmony versus personal conviction. With Mars moving through Libra, you may find your natural fiery expression toned down a little bit to accommodate group dynamics. The main challenge comes from the square between Mars and Libra and your ruler of Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. This creates a clash between what is fair to the group and to your own deep emotional and generous impulse to act on your truth. How this can play out is you might want to passionately defend a cause you believe in, but the social pressure to be diplomatic and not rock the boat feels immense. And so a tip and trick at this time is to find a way to be both truthful and tactful in your truth. Your identity is growing when you learn to wrap your fiery arrows of truth in the velvet of diplomacy. Weird analogy, but it's really true at this time. You don't have to sacrifice your conviction, but you may need to find a way to deliver it in a proper way that will be heard by everybody. Capricorn suns, your identity is being pressure tested by a crisis of faith versus facts. Your sense of self is often tied to what is tangible, provable, and logical. And this month, planets in pragmatic Virgo will support this for you. However, your ruler of Saturn is retrograde in mystical Pisces, opposing all of that Virgo energy. This creates a deep tension between your practical reality and the sense of spiritual doubt or fogginess or confusion. Take what resonates with that. And how this can play out is maybe you present a well-researched logical plan either at work or at home or with yourself, but it gets shot down for reasons that feel either vague or illogical. Maybe the timing doesn't feel right, and this is just maddening for you. But a tip and trick at this time is that your consciousness is being asked to develop faith when things don't follow through. The trick is to surrender the need for absolute control and trust that even when things don't make logical sense, that there is a larger, more unseen order at play. Aquarius suns, your identity is being rewired and upgraded this month. Your modern ruler of Uranus is retrograde in the fellow air sign of Gemini, prompting you to internally process the brilliant ideas and changes of the past few months. Your sense of self is shifting from external revolution to internal integration. The key transit, though, is the Mercury-Uranus square at the start of the month, which directly connects your deep analytical mind with this internal revolutionary energy. And how it can play out is you could be deep in research when a sudden memory or an idea from your past completely reframes your current project, changing everything in the way that you're looking at something. And so a tip and trick for this month is to allow for non-linear processing. Your identity is being redefined by connecting ideas that don't normally come together across different points of your life. It's about connecting the dots throughout your whole life, essentially. The trick is to let your mind wander and to make those unconventional connections come naturally to you. That's where your genius is going to lie this month. Pisces Sun, September is a month of major identity clarification for you because with Saturn in retrograde in your sign, you've been under a heavy process of maturation, feeling the weight of reality. The full moon and lunar eclipse in your sign on the 7th is a powerful emotional release, washing away a version of yourself that you've outgrown. It's a culmination of this reality check process. The challenge comes from the oppositions from the planets transiting Virgo this month, which there is a lot, and these demand practicality and details that can feel overwhelming to your fluid nature. And how this can play out is maybe you have a deep intuitive insight, but when you try to explain it, you're met with demands for facts or figures and a step-by-step plan that you just simply don't have. But a tip and trick for you this time is don't try to be a Virgo. Your gift is your intuition. Even if you're smart, even if you have Virgo planets, when you're expressing your identity, use the lens of intuition. The trick is to find a practical partner or a system that can help you ground your visions into reality. Your identity solidifies when you learn to honor your mystical nature while respecting the demands of the material world. For my Aries moons, your emotional world is navigating the dynamic interplay between your personal needs and the needs of others or other obligations. Your ruling planet of Mars is in the sign of Libra, inviting your independent, action-oriented heart to engage with a little bit of compromise at this time. Around mid-month, the Mars-Chiron opposition brings your core emotional sensitivities around autonomy and self-assertion into focus. And how this can play out is you might express a direct emotional need, and the situation requires you to negotiate, bringing up the core tension between your impulse for independence and the requirements of a relationship. And how to work with this energy is that the work here is to integrate your autonomy within your connections. Your need for independence is a core part of your emotional security. The task is to practice stating your needs calmly and clearly while remaining open to collaborative outcomes. If your natal moon is in Taurus, then this month offers opportunities for deep emotional grounding with moments that invite flexibility. The planets in the sign of Virgo at this time will form a supportive trine, at least by sign, to your moon, helping you feel secure in your daily routines. You'll likely find comfort in tangible, orderly tasks. An element of unpredictability, though, is introduced mid-month when your ruler of Venus makes a square with Uranus, which can stir the waters of your emotional stability. And how this can play out is maybe you're feeling perfectly content and secure in your environment, and then an unexpected expense or a friend's spontaneous decision introduces a variable that tests your sense of peace. And how to work with the energy this month is that this is an opportunity to build resilience. The work is to build a little flexibility into your stable world. This could look like an emotional rainy day fund or a go-to practice that helps you find your center when the unexpected occurs. If your natal moon is in Gemini, then your inner landscape is intellectually and nervously stimulated this month. With Uranus in your sign, the emotional state is already attuned to sudden shifts, and September's energy will highlight this. The squares from the eclipses in Virgo and Pisces, at least by sign, create a dynamic tension between your need for clear facts and a wave of intuitive, nonlinear feelings. And how this can play out is maybe you encounter a piece of information and your mind begins rapidly processing scenarios which can feel emotionally activating. Your need to understand is met by both logic and intuition at once, and how to work with this energy is that your security at this time comes from curiosity. When you feel emotionally activated by information, instead of trying to land on a single right answer, the word is to ask, what are the different facets of this? This creates mental space and calms the nervous system, as you can see that multiple truths can exist at once. If your natal moon is in Cancer, then your emotional world is expansive this month. With Jupiter in your sign, your feelings are amplified, offering a richer emotional experience. This month's eclipses are in supportive position for you, at least by aspect, being in water and earth signs, because the lunar eclipse in fellow water sign Pisces will form a trine to your moon, at least by sign, presenting an opportunity for a deep and gentle emotional release. And how this can play out is maybe an everyday experience like watching a movie or listening to a song might open the floodgates, allowing you to release a feeling you didn't even know you were holding on to. And how to work with this energy is that the work is to allow the release to happen. Your emotions are a source of information this month. The key is to create like a safe container for them, whether it's through journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or spending time near the water, which a lot of my water dominant friends love to do. So you can observe the wave of the feeling without being overwhelmed by it, and just let yourself go with the flow this month. If your natal moon is in Leo, then your emotional security this month is linked to feeling competent and appreciated for your contributions. With the sun moving through Virgo, your inner world feels most stable when you are being helpful. The opposition from Saturn to the sun mid-month introduces a theme of sober self-assessment, though, which can bring up feelings of being unseen if your confidence is externally based. I'm a Leo moon, I relate to this a lot. And so how this can play out, though, is that you apply significant effort to a project, and maybe the feedback you receive is more critical than you had hoped for, offering a chance to check in with your own sense of self-worth. And how to work with this energy is that the emotional task is to cultivate inner validation, validate yourself. Before you seek external feedback, take a moment to appreciate your own effort and creative spark. Give yourself the pat on the back, because the work is to fill your own cup first, so that external opinions become a data point rather than a verdict of your value. If your natal moon is in Virgo, then September offers a potent emotional reset. With the solar eclipse in your sign, you have an opportunity to set new intentions for your emotional patterns. Your need for order is high, and you have planetary support to create systems that help you feel secure. This is because there's a lot of planets going on in Virgo this month, and this is balanced by Saturn in your opposite sign of Pisces, which presents a dynamic between your need for control and life's inherent messiness. And how this can play out is maybe you have a clear plan for your day, but an unexpected emotional current, whether it's yours or somebody else's, redirects your course, leaving you to navigate the unexpected. But how to work with this energy is the work is to embrace structured flexibility. Your emotional growth comes from learning to hold your plans a little more loosely, and the trick is to schedule time for unstructured being, to create space for the emotional and unpredictable side of life. Put a little buffer in your schedule. That's the summary. If your natal moon is in Libra, then your emotional landscape is energized and activated this month a lot, because your core need for peace and fairness is being infused with the direct assertive energy of Mars transiting your sign. This may bring a feeling of restlessness, but it could also highlight areas where peace has been kept at the expense of true balance, motivating you to address it. And how this can play out is maybe a long-standing or unbalanced dynamic in a relationship or with yourself may reach a point where you feel a powerful internal call to speak up and advocate for genuine fairness. And how to work with the energy is that your feelings are signals calling for equilibrium. And so the work is to channel the Martian energy of this month constructively. Instead of reacting with irritation, use this drive to initiate a calm but firm conversation or realization aimed at creating more authentic and balanced connections in your life. If your natal moon is in Scorpio, then this month offers a deep emotional recalibration. The lunar eclipse in fellow water sign of Pisces will form a supportive trine to your moon, at least by sign, allowing for gentle release of a long-held emotional burden. From the 22nd, as your traditional ruler of Mars enters your sign of Scorpio, you will feel a return of your emotional focus and intensity. This is immediately, though, met by a square to Pluto, which is testing your personal power against a deeper structural force. And so how this can play out is maybe after a period of emotional release, you feel a surge of determination to change a situation only to encounter a foundational family dynamic or a psychological pattern or an existential block that requires strategic navigation. And how to work with this energy is to realize that true emotional power is about mastering your own responses. Let the eclipse cleanse what is ready to be released, and when you encounter a challenge, the work is to focus on your own integrity and reactions, which is the one thing you can always navigate with conscious intent. If your natal moon is in Sagittarius, your emotional need for freedom and expansion or optimism is invited to navigate the nuances of social diplomacy this month. This is because Mars is in Libra, and your optimistic nature is met with situations that require more tact than blunt honesty. And then the square between Mars and Libra and your ruler of Jupiter, which is transiting Cancer, will create a dynamic tension between your expansive, generous impulses or your optimism maybe, and the need to maintain fairness for all involved. Maybe you feel like you're jeopardizing yourself in some way. But how else this can play out is maybe you feel a big-hearted urge to help somebody, but maybe another part of you recognizes that doing so might create an imbalance in another area of your life, prompting a deep internal negotiation. And how to work with this energy is that your emotions are seeking wise course of action. Before acting on a big feeling, run it through a filter. What is the most balanced and principled path here? The work is to align your generous heart with your higher philosophical mind. If your natal moon is in Capricorn, then your emotional security, which comes from competence and control or stability in some way, is invited to explore more intuitive ways of being. With your ruler of Saturn in the fluid sign of Pisces now, you may experience a sense of emotional fluidity or even uncertainty. And the opposition from the Virgo planets highlights a dynamic between what can be logically understood and what must be intuitively felt. And how this can play out is maybe you may have a clear logical reason for feeling a certain way, but you experience a wave of emotion that seems to have no tangible source. It don't make sense, which invites you to trust your non-rational side a little bit because your emotions are telling you something. And how to work with this energy is that your emotional body is asking for faith and rest at this time. You cannot out-logic your feelings, and so the work is to schedule time for non-productive being, whether it's through meditation, listening to music, a walk in nature, watching TV, something that soothes your inner landscape and allow for a little bit of mystery in your life. If your natal moon is in Aquarius, then your emotional world is focused on integrating recent changes. Your security comes from understanding, but your ruler or your modern ruler of Uranus is retrograde, turning you to process inward a little bit. And the aspects to Mars at the beginning and end of the month present moments where your intellectual processing is met with direct, assertive energy, prompting a more embodied response in whatever it is that you do. And how this can play out is you might be observing a situation with emotional detachment, but maybe a sudden power dynamic or confrontation triggers a surprisingly strong and immediate feeling in your body that you gotta listen to. And how to work with this energy is to realize that your emotions are catching up with your intellect this month. When a strong feeling arises, the work is not to just analyze it, but to notice where you feel it in your body. The goal is to allow your emotional self and your intellectual self to be in conversation rather than letting one dominate the other. And if you are a Pisces moon, this is a landmark month for your emotional landscape because the lunar eclipse is in your sign, and this is a potent opportunity to release an old emotional narrative. With Saturn also in your moon sign, this is part of an ongoing process of building emotional boundaries and self-containment, learning to take ownership of your feelings in a brand new way. And so how this can play out is maybe a situation may arise where you find yourself responding with a calm but firm no to something you would have previously allowed, which is an action that can feel both empowering and a little bit novel. And how to work with the energy this month is that you are building your emotional container. This is something you need to realize, and the work is to practice self-compassion as you learn. Setting new boundaries is a skill that develops over time. It doesn't need to be something you get right away. And so celebrate the small victories and know that every time you honor your own emotional needs, your inner foundation becomes that much stronger. If your natal Mercury is in Aries, then this month's initial energy invites your quick, direct mind to adopt a more methodical pace. With Mercury in the sign of detail-oriented Virgo, at least at the start of the month, the dynamic is between your impulse to act and a call to focus on the fine print. The Mercury-Uranus square on the 2nd can bring a welcome flash of insight to you. And then mid-month, as Mercury opposes Saturn and Neptune, clarity may require a little more effort, presenting a dynamic of delays and maybe ambiguity. And how this can play out is maybe you pitch or even have a brilliant idea, but the response is a call to wait and see, meaning maybe you can't act on these thoughts right away, or maybe you receive vague, non-committal feedback that tests your patience. And how to work with the energy is use the Virgo energy early in the month to create a simple bullet-pointed plan in whatever it is that you do. And when you encounter the mid-month delays, this list will become your anchor. It's a tool to remind your mind of its own clarity when external circumstances feel a little bit slow or foggy. If your natal Mercury is in Taurus, then your deliberate, methodical mind is well supported by the month's initial energy, because with Mercury, at least by sign, in a harmonious trine from Virgo, your thinking is clear and practical. It's a constructive time for making plans and sorting tangible details. The square to Uranus on the 2nd, though, from transit Mercury, introduces an element of sudden news or change, while the mid-month oppositions to Saturn and Neptune present intangible variables that challenge a purely common sense approach. And how this can play out is maybe you create a well-structured plan, but an unexpected opportunity appears, creating a mental tension between the desire for security and the appeal of innovation or change. And how to work with this energy is trust your methodical process. In the first 2 weeks, create your solid plan A, and when disruptions or delays arise later in the month, you'll feel mentally secured knowing that you have a strong foundation to return to. The work is to not let ambiguity make you doubt the solid ground that you've already built. If your natal Mercury is in Gemini, then your mind is highly activated this month, with your ruler of Mercury in a square by sign, at least from Virgo. Your natural curiosity is channeled through a filter of precision and critique. The square to Uranus on the 2nd from transit Mercury can feel like a sudden destabilizing flash of genius, and then later the opposition to Saturn and Neptune on the 17th can manifest as a call for mental discipline or a tendency towards negative thought patterns. And so how this can play out is you may generate numerous ideas but feel mentally hesitant, questioning if they are good enough, while also being stimulated by new information. It's just a lot of mental overload. But how to work with this energy is that the task is to become a curious observer of your own mind. So use a journal to distinguish between useful data and anxious chatter in your mind. By creating this separation, you avoid identifying with every thought, and when Mercury enters Libra on the 18th, your social and verbal flow will feel a little bit more harmonious, so the end of the month should be easier for you. If your natal Mercury is in Cancer, then your intuitive, feeling-based mind is invited to partner with logic this month. With Mercury in the sign of analytical Virgo, you are better able to articulate your feelings and ground your hunches in practical steps. The challenge comes mid-month, though, when the oppositions to Saturn and Neptune introduce a wave of ambiguity or a sense of limitation from the past, which tests your mental clarity in some way. And so how this can play out is maybe you have a clear intention to discuss something with a family member or a friend, but when the time comes, you're met with a wave of old emotional patterns or a sudden lack of clarity on how to vocalize it. And so how to work with this energy is write down what you think if you ever want to discuss something beforehand. And during the clear-headed first half of the month, journal about what you need to communicate with others. When the emotional fog rolls in, you can read your own words back to yourself as a tangible reminder of your clear intentions. If your natal Mercury is in Leo, then this month's energy invites your big picture creative mind to focus on the practical details. The emphasis is on the how as much as the what. The opposition from Saturn and Neptune to transit Mercury on the 17th presents a test of your mental confidence, perhaps through critical feedback that asks you to back up your vision with facts. And how this can play out is maybe you present a grand creative vision, and the initial response is focused on the logistical details and potential problems, inviting you to strengthen your plan's foundation. And so, how to work with this energy is to realize that your strength is the vision, and the work is to honor the details. Consider finding a partner with a detail-oriented mind to handle the fine print for you. This frees you up to focus on the inspiring big picture while ensuring its practical viability. If your natal Mercury is in Virgo, then this is a month of high mental acuity that comes with a significant test of focus. I'm a Mercury in Virgo. Let's see how this month goes for us. But for the first 3 weeks, I predict that our minds will be sharp and efficient. However, you are also hosting this month's challenging aspects because Mercury will be in Virgo and squaring with Uranus and Gemini earlier in the month, which brings disruptive insights. And then the opposition to Saturn and Neptune on the 17th to transit Mercury can manifest as a deep mental discipline or harsh self-criticism. We might get in our heads a little bit. And so how this could play out is maybe you create a flawless system only to have a key variable change unexpectedly. This activates your problem-solving skills, but you may be met with delays that test your patience. And how to work with this energy is that your superpower is organization. Your area for growth is releasing perfectionism. I got to work on this too. And so the work is to build contingency plans and accept that you cannot control every variable. This acceptance is the key to your mental peace. If your natal Mercury is in Libra, then your mind, which seeks balance and likes to see all sides of the story, finds the initial analytical energy of the month productive for sorting through options. The main shift occurs on the 18th when Mercury enters your sign, which enhances your mental grace. This happens as Mercury opposes Neptune, though, which can infuse conversations with idealism but may lead to misunderstandings if clarity isn't prioritized. And how this can play out is maybe you have a conversation to create harmony and you both leave feeling good or you leave feeling good only to realize later that you each had different interpretations of the outcome of the conversation. And so how to work with this energy is to seek clarity through gentle repetition. After an important conversation, the work is to follow up with a simple clarifying statement, just making sure that the person is on the same page. Maybe you just reiterate what you interpreted and ask if they interpreted it the same. And this ensures true harmony, not just apparent agreement, which can help you in so many ways. If your natal Mercury is in Scorpio, then your investigative mind is well supported by the analytical Virgo energy for the first half of the month, helping you to connect the dots. The mid-month opposition from Saturn can manifest as an authority figure or system creating roadblocks to this information, while the Neptune opposition can cloud the facts with a little bit of ambiguity. And how this can play out is maybe you're trying to get to the bottom of an issue, but your inquiries are met with official rules from Saturn, or maybe vague responses even from Neptune. And so how to work with this energy is to realize you can't force information from others. The work is to turn your investigative lens inward and ask yourself, what is my focus on this topic revealing about my own need for control or certainty? And so shifting your focus to open dialogue when Mercury enters Libra will be more effective at getting to the bottom of things. If your natal Mercury is in Sagittarius, then your big picture mind is invited to engage with the world of details for the first half of the month. This dynamic is between your love for expansive truths and the need to focus on the facts. The opposition to Saturn, though, on the 17th from transit Mercury presents a dialogue between your optimistic ideas and the more sober, realistic perspective. And so how this can play out is maybe you propose an exciting, expansive idea, and then the feedback you receive is focused entirely on the practical reasons it may not work, testing your enthusiasm. And so how to work with this energy is that the work is to ground your vision in practicality. Before pitching your grand ideas, do a little research and present it with a few key data points to back it up. By speaking the language of practical realism, you give your expansive ideas a better chance to take root. If your natal Mercury is in Capricorn, then your structured mind finds productive flow with the initial month's energy, allowing for exceptional clarity and organizational skills. The test, though, will come mid-month as you navigate sudden disruption from your plans from the Uranus square and encounter structural limitations or delays from authority from the Saturn opposition. And how this can play out is maybe you create a perfect project plan, then a sudden change makes part of it obsolete, and your proposed fix is met with a no or not now from a person in charge. And so how to work with this energy, especially during the first half of the month, is to document your clear thinking. And when you encounter a Saturnian no, whether it's from a person or a circumstance, the work is to use your respect for structure and your respect for putting things together to your advantage. So ask for a timeline. Ask them to rediscuss your points next week. And this respects authority while strategically keeping your well-laid plans in motion. And so if it's not a yes now, it may be a yes later. If your natal Mercury is in Aquarius, then your systems-oriented mind resonates with the analytical Virgo energy, helping you to structure your innovative ideas. The Mercury-Uranus square on the 2nd can deliver sudden, brilliant insights, and then the opposition to Saturn from transit Mercury mid-month presents the classic dynamic between forward-thinking ideas and an established traditional system. And so how this can play out is maybe you have a brilliant insight on how to improve a workflow, but you're met with the bureaucratic red tape or the classic, but we've always done it this way. And so how to work with this energy is instead of fighting the old system head on, the work is to demonstrate the new one and prove it by example. Build a beta version or a small scale model of your idea on the side. And this can be with work, but it could be with any area of your life. So be creative with thinking about how this can play out, because a working prototype is the most effective argument against outdated thinking. If your natal Mercury is in Pisces, then your intuitive nonlinear mind is in a dynamic dialogue with logic for most of September. With Mercury in your opposite sign, you may be asked to translate your intuitive insights into linear facts. The opposition to Saturn on the 17th can bring up self-doubt about your thought processes, inviting you to build confidence in your unique way of knowing things. And so how this can play out, though, is maybe you have a strong intuitive sense about something, but when you try to explain it logically, the words feel inadequate, creating a moment of potential misunderstanding. And so how to work with this energy is don't try to out-logic the logicians. Your superpower is your intuition, and so the work is to honor your native communication style. Lean into metaphors and imagery when trying to explain stuff instead of stating a fact. And try to express feelings kind of by saying something like, oh, my sense of the situation is this, this, and that, because this allows you to communicate your truth authentically in such a way that is so authentic to your natural way of communication that I think that your truths are going to be more likely to resonate, and maybe it'll make people investigate them. With natal Venus in Aries, your desire for direct, passionate expression is celebrated for the first 3 weeks while Venus transits fellow fire sign Leo. Your values are centered on bold creativity and heartfelt affection. The shift occurs on September 19th when Venus enters analytical Virgo. The energy moves from enthusiastic pursuit to practical service, which can feel like a sudden downshift. That same day, the jarring Venus-Uranus square brings a flash of disruptive information or a sudden mental restlessness that challenges your straightforward approach, urging you to consider alternative perspectives. And how this can play out is maybe you're enjoying fun, straightforward romance or passions, and suddenly a piece of unexpected news or scheduling conflict forces a series of complicated, detailed conversations or setbacks that dampen the spontaneous mood. And so channel the Virgo energy into refining a skill that you're passionate about. When the Uranian restlessness hits, use your initiating fire to brainstorm brilliant, if chaotic, solutions rather than picking a fight. With your natal Venus and Taurus Your ruler of Venus spends the first 3 weeks in Leo, bringing a desire for grand, luxurious pleasures and heartfelt stability. You value what is generous and impressive. The mood shifts on September 19th, though, as Venus enters Virgo, a fellow Earth sign. Your appreciation turns towards well-crafted, practical, and understated beauty, which is an energy that you're comfortable with. The major shakeup, though, is the Venus-Uranus square on that same day as that shift, which directly challenges your financial security or your core values. Take what resonates with an unexpected development, creating tension between what is stable and what is suddenly uncertain. And so an example on how this can play out is maybe you've budgeted for like a very quality purchase, but a sudden unexpected expense or a brilliant but risky financial idea emerges, forcing you to choose between planned security and spontaneous risk. And so ground yourself in sensory reality at this time. When the jolt of uncertainty hits, focus on what is tangible and reliable in your immediate environment. This reminds your system that not everything is in flux, which can help calm you down. If your natal Venus is in Gemini, then your value for witty, versatile, and stimulating connections thrives while Venus is in the social sign of Leo. The first 3 weeks are a great time for playful banter and creative exchange. When Venus enters Virgo, though, on the 19th, conversations or passions may become more focused on problem solving than on the delightful exchange of ideas, which can feel a little bit heavy. The Venus-Uranus square on the same day is a major event as Uranus is in your sign. This is a personal lightning bolt of sorts, delivering a sudden electric insight about what you truly value and a deep, urgent need for intellectual and relational freedom. So how this could play out, just an example, is maybe you suddenly realize a friendship has become intellectually stagnant and you feel an overwhelming need to introduce a radical new idea or connect with a completely different type of person to feel mentally alive again. Take those themes to whatever area of life applies. And so a tip and trick is to articulate your need for novelty before acting on impulse and frame it as an invitation for shared or mutually beneficial discovery. And so this is kind of how you can bring others into your process of change while stimulating yourself, but also not really disrupting things that don't need to be disrupted. If your natal Venus is in Cancer, then your nurturing heart values the warmth and affection of Venus in Leo. The first 3 weeks support a generous, open-hearted connection. When Venus enters Virgo on the 19th, the language of love will shift to practical care and tangible acts of service, which is a form of devotion that you deeply appreciate. The jarring part, though, is that the Venus-Uranus square can feel a little bit out of the blue, bringing subconscious anxieties to the surface or deliver disruptive information that unsettles your emotional equilibrium. And so an example on how this can play out is maybe you feel secure in a connection or with a passion project, and suddenly unexpected secrets or a piece of gossip or something that kind of dampens your mood will come to light, making you feel emotionally untethered and questioning your intuition. But just know that true security comes from your inner foundation. So when rattled, do something to reinforce your personal sanctuary, whether it's just tend to your home, cook a meal, relax, talk to somebody that you love, or journal. Take what resonates and just really find your center at this time. If your natal Venus is in Leo, then you get to enjoy Venus in your sign for the first 3 weeks. This is your time to shine. Your values are centered on creative self-expression, heartfelt generosity, and joyful romance. You feel seen and appreciated. The vibe, though, will change dramatically on September 19th as Venus enters Virgo, shifting the focus from grand expression to practical refinement and service. The Venus-Uranus square on the same day can bring a sudden, unexpected development within your social circle or your community, challenging your sense of belonging or disrupting a long-term aspiration. And so how this can play out, just an example, take what resonates, is maybe you're feeling confident about your role in a group, and suddenly a friend makes an unpredictable choice or a community goal is radically altered, forcing you to reevaluate your alliances and where you stand. And so reframe Virgo's influence as the post-production phase of your life. You've been the star, now it's time to refine the work, and use this critical energy to perfect your creation rather than perfecting yourself, because you could be nitpicky to yourself at this time. So just remember that. If your natal Venus is in Virgo, for the first 3 weeks, Venus will be in Leo, moving through a more private and preparatory part of your chart. It's a time for quiet creative work or behind the scenes affection. The main event, though, for you this month begins September 19th when Venus enters your sign, because your values of precision, helpfulness, and discernment are now cosmically aligned. You're in your element. However, this happens just as Venus squares with Uranus, creating a powerful tension between your desire for order and a disruptive revolutionary impulse related to something sort of outside of yourself, which demands radical change to your approaches on your passions. And so how this can play out, this is just an example, is maybe you've perfected a plan for your career path and a sudden but wildly unconventional opportunity appears that is both terrifying and thrilling, throwing your carefully laid plans into chaos. And so intentionally schedule time for imperfection. Leave a block of time completely unplanned around the 19th. This creates a container sort of for chaos, allowing the Uranian energy to express itself without making you feel like your entire value system has failed. If your natal Venus is in Libra, then your ruler of Venus will spend the first 3 weeks in social Leo, highlighting friendships, group activities, and shared ideals. It's a time of warm collaborative energy. On the 19th, though, Venus slips into Virgo and a more private sector of your chart, calling you to find beauty in rest, reflection, and inner refinement. That same day, the Venus-Uranus square brings a sudden jolt to your worldview, maybe an unexpected piece of information, or a conversation that radically alters a long-held belief and challenges your sense of equilibrium could come up. And so how this could play out is maybe you're mediating a situation based on a certain set of principles, and a sudden revelation completely changes the philosophical or ethical landscape, forcing you to rethink your entire stance. It could be kind of like an uh-oh type of moment, but don't react immediately. The Uranian insight needs time to integrate. You need time to process it. So use the reflective Virgo energy to journal and mediate on this new perspective before you try to create external harmony around it. Process it and then take action, basically. If your natal Venus is in Scorpio, then your intense nature relates to the fixed, loyal fire sign of Venus in Leo, which highlights your public image or like how you sort of like relate when it comes to love and passions for the first 3 weeks. It's a time to be valued for what you're passionate about and your sense of strength. But on September 19th, Venus will move into the analytical sign of Virgo, shifting your focus to sort of like what you can create and fine-tuning the details. You can now apply your penetrating insight into creating something big for this world. And the Uranus square on the same day is a potential catalyst for this, bringing a sudden revelation concerning how you like use your resources that are both electrifying in what you're going to create in this world, but also destabilizing. And so how this can play out, this is just an example, is maybe a sudden insight reveals the true nature of a deep bond or a partnership, forcing an immediate and necessary reevaluation of trust and vulnerability. But a tip and trick at this time is to use Virgo's analytical energy to gather facts without immediate judgment. The trick is to observe the power dynamics revealed by the Uranian jolt around the middle of the month and wait a few days for the initial shock to subside before taking strategic action. If your natal Venus is in Sagittarius, your expansive spirit loves the vibe of Venus in Leo. For the first 3 weeks of the month, it's the time for adventure, exploring new philosophies, and making big-hearted and optimistic connections. The energy, though, will shift on the 19th as Venus enters Virgo, placing your values kind of like in your public sphere and sort of opening up the floodgates to a more detailed sense of aesthetic or beauty or passion, whatever it may be. And the focus is now on the practical details in service, which can feel a little bit constraining because you don't always focus on the details when it comes to how you express yourself. And the Venus-Uranus square is a major event, creating direct confrontation or breakthrough in a key relationship or how you relate to others that demands a radical new level of freedom and honesty. And so how this can play out, just an example, is maybe a partner or a close collaborator suddenly expresses a need for a different kind of life or belief system, which directly challenges challenges the shared vision you thought you both held, forcing a renegotiation. But freedom doesn't have to mean separation. The trick is to negotiate for more intellectual and personal breathing room within your connections. Can you explore different belief systems together? Because radical honesty about your need for expansion is the best tool for you at this time. If your natal Venus is in Capricorn, then your pragmatic values align with the deep committed energy of Venus and Leo for the first 3 weeks, focusing on shared resources and your long-term bonds or your long-term passions. The shift on September 19th, though, as Venus enters your fellow Earth sign of Leo, is a harmonious one. Your focus turns to expanding your worldview through practical learning or well-planned travel or just learning about new philosophies in some way. The disruption, though, comes from the Venus-Uranus square, which can bring a sudden chaotic change to your daily work, your routines, creating stress that can impact how you connect with other people or your passions. And so how this can play out, just an example, is maybe a sudden tech failure or a schedule upheaval at work or a health concern throws your entire well-structured day into disarray, undermining your ability to show up for others with your usual dependability. And so your connections must be resilient enough for real-world stress. The trick is to communicate the structural pressure that you're under. Just saying something like, my systems are haywire today due to X, so I may not be at my best, will build intimacy through honest vulnerability. And being vulnerable at this time will probably serve you better than you think. If your natal Venus is in Aquarius, then your unconventional values find a kinship with the expressive energy of Venus in Leo, which is your opposite sign for the first 3 weeks. This highlights maybe your one-on-one relationships or how you relate to others, bringing warmth and creativity. On September 19th, though, Venus will be entering Virgo, turning your focus to the deeper, more complex patterns of intimacy and your passions. The Venus-Uranus square on the same day, though, could be a thrilling and welcoming event to you, bringing a sudden creative breakthrough, maybe an electrifying romantic spark, or liberating moment of authentic self-expression. And so an example on how this can play out is maybe you suddenly connect with someone over a shared quirky interest or a progressive ideal, and this synergetic energy feels liberating and world-changing, or maybe a brilliant idea for a creative project strikes you like lightning almost. And so say yes to the unexpected invitation or the out-of-the-blue idea that comes this month. This jolt is tailor-made for your nature. Lean into the spontaneous energy around the 19th, as it's bringing exactly the kind of intellectual and creative stimulation that your heart values the most. And if your natal Venus is in Pisces, your compassionate nature finds the warmth of Venus and Leo's supportive energy for your well-being for the first 3 weeks. On September 19th, though, Venus will be entering Virgo, your opposite sign, shifting the focus squarely onto your key partnerships or how you relate to others or how you express your passions in some way. This can create a tension between your desire for unconditional fluid connection and Virgo's need for practical discernment and clear boundaries. The Venus-Uranus square adds a jolt of instability as well, bringing sudden news or disruption from your emotional foundations that directly impacts your relationship dynamics. Maybe it could be like a realization about a foundation that you have emotionally that's not as solid as you thought. And how this can play out, though, is that maybe you're trying to connect emotionally, but a sudden jarring family issue or a problem with your living situation creates stress and demands a practical analytical response that feels disconnected from your heart. And so realize that two truths can exist at once. The world's focus on practicality doesn't negate your need for soulful connection or passion. The trick is to see them as two parts of a whole and to ground yourself in a spiritual or creative practice to stay centered and then address the practical matters that are sort of overwhelming you this month with precision and clarity. If you have Mars in Aries, then this month places your ruling planet of Mars in its opposite sign of Libra. This means that your direct forward-moving drive is being asked to learn the art of diplomacy. Then around the 16th, the opposition from transit Mars to Chiron in your sign of Aries brings a heightened awareness to any insecurities around your right to assert yourself. You might be ready to launch a project, but find the situation requires deep collaboration, bringing the core tension of my way versus our way into sharp focus. The goal isn't to force your agenda, but to use Libra's diplomatic energy to get others on board or to do something that will appeal to others depending on what you're pursuing. And when Mars enters Scorpio on the 22nd, you'll have a powerful coalition or a shared goal or a good idea in place, and you'll be ready to act with the focused intensity that you need to truly make an impact. If your natal Mars is in Taurus, then your steady, determined drive is blending with the energy of balance and diplomacy. You prefer a clear path, and the current need to debate and find consensus is a masterclass in patience for you. The square from Jupiter to transit Mars on September 5th can amplify a desire to expand, asking you to be mindful of how you're managing your daily life or your health in some way. Then, late in the month, especially after Mars enters Scorpio on the 22nd, it will oppose your natal Mars, at least by sign, creating a direct call for you to stand firm in what you value. Your stamina is your superpower, and so during the Libra phase, let others debate while you conserve your energy. The work is to observe and maintain your position. When the opposition hits later in the month, you'll have the resilience to be an unmovable, stabilizing force, and so this could be a very interesting month for you to get things done. If your natal Mars is in Gemini, then your quick mental drive is energized by Mars moving through a fellow air sign. And so your passion is ignited by ideas of fairness and diplomacy, and you are motivated to debate and negotiate at this time. The square to Jupiter from Mars in Libra on the 5th can fill you with grand optimistic ideas that will need to be grounded in the emotional reality of a situation. Maybe you get fired up in a conversation or an idea, and you passionately advocate for this idea, feeling the full power of your intellectual drive. Your mind is your primary tool. But before you commit to your energy, the work is to use the Libra energy to play devil's advocate with your own plans. And so by exploring alternate viewpoints first, you make sure that your own position is that much stronger when it is finally time to act. And so that's how the month will go for you. If your natal Mars is in Cancer, then your protective intuitive drive is in a dynamic square with Mars in Libra. So you do have your Mars square, at least by sign. And so your gut instinct is to act on the behalf of loved ones or to act on the behalf of your emotional passions. And this will be met with a call for detached fairness. The square to Jupiter in your sign on the 5th as well amplifies your emotional world, asking you to find your center amidst the many competing feelings. Maybe you'll feel an immediate gut level need to defend someone or something, while the situation calls for a more balanced, multifaceted approach. Your protective energy needs a clear focus, and the work is to turn that fierce drive inward to protect your own peace by setting clear boundaries. But then when Mars enters your fellow water sign of Scorpio on the 22nd, your intuitive actions will feel more potent and also deeply aligned to your goals. If your natal Mars is in Leo, then your bold or creative or exuberant drive is being channeled through the lens of balance and diplomacy. Your natural impulse is to express yourself with flair, and the current energy invites you to do so within a collaborative framework. The square to Jupiter from transit Mars on September 5th, though, presents a balancing act between your public expression or how you express yourself to the world and your private emotional needs. You might be ready to make a big charismatic move, while maybe like a home matter or a matter within yourself also requires your energy. And so treat this as a masterclass in leadership. The work is to win over allies before you act and use your natural warmth to persuade and inspire others, building consensus rather than relying on sheer force or will. And so this is like such a great month to channel your drive into leading a cause that you're super passionate about, but make sure you take care of yourself at the same time. With natal Mars in Virgo, your precise methodical drive is now being applied to the realm of balance and how you apply your energy in this world. You're motivated to use your analytical skills to find fair and elegant solutions no matter what you do. And with the Mars Chiron opposition around the 16th, this can bring a heightened sensitivity to how your helpful actions are being perceived by others. You might offer a carefully considered solution, and that might not always go over well. But this also provides a chance to learn how your help can be best communicated. Your actions come from a desire to be of service, and the work is to ensure that your service is wanted. By asking first, are you open to a new perspective on this? Are you open to my help? You ensure that your drive to improve things is received as the gift that it's intended to be. And if it's rejected, then that's more of a them thing that you shouldn't have to worry about. With natal Mars in Libra, Mars is in your sign until the 22nd, and your energy levels may be high, but your drive is expressed with a unique condition. You're motivated to act and restore balance and fairness at this time. With the opposition to Chiron from transit Mars on the 16th, this will highlight any insecurities around asserting yourself and your own needs versus the needs of others. You might feel sort of like this need to stand up for yourself while simultaneously feeling an equally strong pull to maintain harmony. And so frame your actions as a necessary rebalancing. The work is to tell yourself that this situation has become imbalanced and my action is required to bring it back to center. And so this aligns your personal drive with your core values, making your actions feel authentic. And then as we go into the Scorpio phase, when Mars moves into Scorpio, it'll then be about enacting your plans with tact and strategy. If your natal Mars is in Scorpio, then for the first 3 weeks, your powerful drive is in a phase of strategic observation while Mars is in Libra. But the main event for you will begin on September 22nd when Mars enters your sign, potentially activating your focus and your stamina with great ease. This is an immediately tested transit though, because it will receive a square to Pluto on the 24th, which is a transit that challenges your ability to apply personal power within larger systematic structures. Maybe you'll make a decisive move only to encounter an entrenched force that requires a different approach. Brute force will be ineffective at this time, and so the work is to see the obstacle not as a wall, but as a prompt to find a hidden path. And your power lies in your ability to navigate complexities from the inside out, and so you may unlock your superpower this month. With natal Mars in Sagittarius, your adventurous drive is channeled into the diplomatic and intellectual realms this month. You're passionate about your beliefs, and this is energized by debates regarding justice or fairness or equality for all because Mars is in Libra. But the square to Jupiter in Cancer on the 5th can fuel your enthusiasm, while Chiron opposite Mars around September 16th may surface vulnerabilities around expressing your personal truth. You might become passionately engaged in a cause, and an interaction highlights the sensitive balance between sharing your convictions and maintaining harmony. Your enthusiasm, trust me, it's a gift, but the work is to give it a focused outlet. And so before you act on a grand impulse, ask yourself one practical question. What is the very first tangible step? And so asking this question will channel your fire into a productive burn. With your natal Mars in Capricorn, then your disciplined, ambitious drive is asked to adapt to a more cooperative approach this month. The square to Jupiter in Cancer from transit Mars on September 5th highlights a pull between your ambitions and how you assert yourself and the need to assert yourself in a way that is very diplomatic. But then with Mars square Pluto by transit Mars and transit Pluto on the 24th, this is a deep test of your personal ambition against foundational systematic forces. Your focused drive might encounter a massive financial or systematic reality that feels a little blocked, and when faced with an immovable force, this is where your leadership ability may arise. And so the work is to release attachment to your original plan and use your strategic mind to find a new angle that works within the new reality and not against it. With natal Mars in Aquarius, Mars is going to be transiting your fellow air sign of Libra this month, and so your intellectual and innovative drive will find harmonious flow. You are motivated to take action for social justice and team goals this month. And on the 24th, there will be a square between Mars and Scorpio and Pluto and Aquarius, and this may create a potent dynamic between your drive for collective progress and the hidden power structures at play. You might be passionately working towards a group goal when an exertion of authority reveals a hidden agenda, and so the power is in your perspective this month. When you encounter a power dynamic, the work is to pull back rather than engage in a ground level fight. Even though I know you want to, don't do it. Analyze the larger pattern and use your insight to reform the system itself from a more objective viewpoint, and this is how you will make so much more progress this month. If your natal Mars is in Pisces, then your fluid, intuitive drive finds itself in an environment that prizes diplomacy this month. The opposition from transit Mars to transit Chiron around the 16th will heighten your awareness of the emotional impact that your actions will have on others. You may recognize the need to set a boundary for your own energetic well-being, creating an opportunity to practice doing so with compassion and clarity. Your drive will feel much more directed and potent when Mars enters your fellow water sign of Scorpio on the 22nd, and so the work is to frame your boundaries as a service for everybody involved, including yourself. For example, you may need to step back from a connection or step back from a conversation if your health or well-being is at stake. And so this honors both their feelings by, especially if you state it as a win-win scenario, but it also honors your energetic limits as well. If your Jupiter's in Aries, then your belief system is forged in the fire of direct hands-on experience. You might find meaning taking the lead. This month, that core impulse is pulled into a powerful T-square because transiting Jupiter in Cancer will be squaring with Mars in Libra, and both will be challenging your natal Jupiter at least by sign, and so you'll feel pulled into three distinct directions. Your gut will say charge forward on my path, but maybe a key relationship demands that you be fair and considerate, and then your own inner world is craving to build emotional safety. And so the tension lies in the feeling that these things are mutually exclusive. And so the trick is to reframe your leadership. Instead of charging ahead, filter your powerful instincts through two questions before you act. First, how can I initiate this energy in a way that actively creates more balance in my key relationships? But second, will this action fortify my foundation, making me and those I care about feel more secure? These are going to be relevant for you this month. If you have your natal Jupiter in Taurus, you construct your philosophy on what is stable, tangible, and beautiful. Your faith is in the material realm. With Jupiter in Cancer forming a harmonious sextile to your natal placement, at least by sign, you're in a season of building deep and lasting security. The tension arrives around the 5th, though, when Mars and Jupiter square, which creates a pull between an appealing social opportunity, maybe a partnership or an event, and then the deep satisfaction that you're finding in your private sanctuary. And so the growth isn't in choosing one over the other, but in investing your expansive energy into things that provide you with compounding emotional and tangible value. The trick is to gracefully explain your priorities, framing your choice not as a rejection, but as a commitment to quality. Maybe say, I'm focusing my resources on building sort of like an emotional base right now, because that lasting security is what allows you to truly connect with others in meaningful ways. And so remember that this month. If you have Jupiter in Gemini, you find truth by connecting disparate ideas and engaging in intellectual synthesis. With the Mars-Jupiter square, this creates tension around September 5th, and your instinct is to talk it through. Maybe a situation at home becomes emotionally charged, and a call for fairness or justice makes it feel complicated. Your gift is to facilitate a dialogue that can translate the raw feeling into understandable information. The nuance here is to avoid the trap of intellectual compartmentalizing the emotion away. The goal isn't to just de-escalate, but to understand. The trick is to use your communicative gifts to ask, what are all the different points of view that are contained within this feeling? And so this allows you to engage your intellect as a tool for empathy this month, not as a shield against it. With natal Jupiter in Cancer, your principle of expansion is being activated by your Jupiter return right now, and this is a period of deep personal growth. Your world is meant to get bigger. But the challenge comes on September 5th when the square from Mars in Libra creates a direct conflict between your personal drive to expand your own world and the external demand to maintain fairness in your partnerships or your relationships or with other people. You might feel a powerful intuitive urge to launch a project, but maybe like somebody else's need for balanced collaborative processes might feel like a frustrating break on your momentum. The nuance is that your personal expansion feels so divinely timed that the relational demand can just feel like an unjust obstacle in your way. And so the trick is to frame your growth as a benefit to everybody and everybody's security, not just yourself. Maybe present a clear proposal that shows how your expansion reinforces the shared foundation, proving that true safety is only possible with a structure of mutual respect. If you have your natal Jupiter in Leo, you find your faith through radiant self-expression and creative generosity. Jupiter's transit through the sign of Cancer asks you to connect that radiant fire to a deeper well of emotional authenticity. The conflict on September 5th arises, though, between your impulse to express your ideas with social grace and the deeper need for those ideas to be nurtured in a safe and emotionally resonant space. You may have a flash of creative insight, and your Leo impulse is to immediately perform or put it out there for the world to see, yet maybe a deeper instinct warns that the idea is too vulnerable for external input at this time. Your luck is found by honoring this need for emotional integrity. The trick is to use your communicative energy to talk about your creative process rather than revealing the creation itself if this comes up. This satisfies the need to connect while protecting the sacred space that your big idea needs to build its emotional core so that it can be ready to eventually release. If your natal Jupiter is in Virgo, your philosophy is constructed through practical application and dedicated service. Around September 5th, the Mars-Jupiter square creates a potent conflict between the resources that you've carefully managed or the systems that you've built for yourself and an emotionally compelling drive to act generously on behalf of the world around you. Your well-structured budget, for example, may feel secure, but then maybe a friend or a cause needs support, creating an impulse to give which directly conflicts with your need to maintain an orderly container. The nuance here is that the intense guilt that this can provoke may be a little bit painful, as your identity is being helpful and your identity is tied to being of service. And so the trick is to build a social action or generosity category within the budget of your life, whether it's with your time or money. Take what resonates. This allows for you to plan for spontaneous helpfulness and to help others and to do what you do best, and creating a system for compassion that satisfies both your desire to give and your need for order. With natal Jupiter in Libra, you construct your worldview through the lens of justice, balance, and relational dynamics. The Mars-Jupiter square on September 5th intensifies a core tension. Mars in your sign energizes your personal drive to act on principle. However, this action directly challenges the emotional security represented by Jupiter's transit through the sign of Cancer. You might feel a powerful need to speak up for what is fair or right, for example, but this action feels like it could destabilize your emotional foundations. The nuance is that for you, acting on principle is growth. The challenge is to integrate emotional wisdom into your ideals of justice. Before you act, ask yourself, how can I frame this necessary action in a way that demonstrates my care for everybody's emotional security, not just for the principle itself? And so this will be a major thing that comes up for you this month. If you have your natal Jupiter in Scorpio, you find meaning by courageously uncovering deep hidden truths. Jupiter's transit through Cancer is in a trine to your Jupiter, at least by sign, creating a powerful flow for this deep work. The conflict, though, from Mars in Libra on September 5th is subtle. The Libra drive for diplomacy and social harmony can feel at odds with the emotionally intense investigation that Scorpio and Cancer energy supports. You may be in the middle of like this deep breakthrough, for example, but feel a simultaneous pull to keep the peace or smooth things over within your relationships or within your bonds. And this can feel like a distracting compromise for you. And so the trick is to recognize that true peace isn't about avoiding conflict. And so schedule time for the deep dive and also schedule time for connection, honoring that both are necessary for that being healthy within your life. With natal Jupiter in Sagittarius, Jupiter is your ruling planet and it is transiting through Cancer, and this shifts your expansive focus from the outer world to the inner landscape of emotional intimacy. The conflict from Mars and Jupiter on September 5th with the square is between something about your social instincts and the new deeper call to engage with the complex ideas of your life. So maybe your social circle might be offering light fun or philosophical debate, but it could cause like a little bit of messy dynamics with one person if they aren't really, on board with this kind of conversation. And this can feel deeply uncomfortable, like being grounded from a great adventure. But your luck is not on the broad highway right now. It's on the intimate side roads. And so the trick is to communicate this shift by simply saying, I'm in a period where I need to focus on some deeper personal things, but I look forward to connecting when I'm back. And this honors your inner journey without alienating your friends or your tribe or your contribution that you're making to this world. With natal Jupiter in Capricorn, you find growth through ambitious long-term building. Jupiter's transit through your opposite sign of Cancer puts the focus on nurturing your emotional foundations. And with the Mars-Jupiter square on the 5th, this creates a powerful T-square to your natal Jupiter, at least by sign. And so the Capricornian need for tangible structure is opposed by the Cancerian call for emotional security. And both are squared by Mars and Libra's demand for relational fairness and compromise. You're being pulled between your personal ambition, maybe your foundational emotional needs, and your relational obligations. And so the trick is to stop seeing these drives as separate, because true and lasting structures must have a secure emotional foundation, and they have to also be built on a fair give and take. And so the challenge for you this month will be to integrate all three. And if you can do that, that is key. If you have your natal Jupiter in Aquarius, your philosophy is built on innovation and humanitarian ideals. Jupiter's transit through Cancer presents a challenge of integration, though, because the Aquarian nature is detached and universal, while Cancer's is attached and personal. This transit asks you to find growth by applying your grand ideals to messy, personal, or emotional situations. Mars and Libra will form a harmonious trine to your Jupiter, at least by sign, providing a tool for this. And so the Libra quest for fairness and balance can be the bridge between your abstract ideals and the real world needs of the people that you care about. And so the trick is to ask, how can my universal principles of fairness be applied in a way that offers genuine care and emotional support to this specific person right now? This is kind of like the bridge for empathy, but it'll also allow you to help in a way that is kind of natural to you with your Jupiter in Aquarius. With a natal Jupiter in Pisces, remember that Jupiter is your traditional ruler, and this is in a harmonious water trine with Jupiter in Cancer, at least by sign. So your capacity for creative self-expression and spiritual connection or empathy, take what resonates, is amplified. You may be in a state of flow this month. The tension is from Mars and Libra, though, on September 5th, which could create jarring conflict, because the boundless imaginative nature of Pisces and Cancer's flow state is confronted by the Libra need for clear definition or social contracts or balanced agreements or win-win scenarios. You could get lost in a state of creative grace only to be interrupted by the need to have a very clear and fair and balanced conversation with another person. This can feel like you're being pulled away from your dream. And so the trick is to not let practical duties poison the creative well that you have. Acknowledge the need for defined conversations, schedule a time for it if you really have to, and then consciously return to your creative state. You can separate the two, but have both exist at the same time, because creating clear relational containers is what ultimately protects the magic that you have. If you have your natal Saturn in Aries, then your life structures are built through decisive independent action. Saturn's transit in Pisces, though, which is the sign of completion that precedes Aries, challenges this by teaching mastery through surrender and accepting what you can't control. This is amplified later in the month by the oppositions of Saturn from analytical Virgo, which can flood your command center with so many conflicting details that you feel paralyzed. The deep frustration you feel is part of the lesson, though. The mastery you're learning right now is that of strategic non-action. The trick is to reframe surrender not as giving up, but as a conscious choice to let a situation unfold without your direct intervention. To observe the process is the work. Trust that your warrior instincts will know the right moment, but that moment may not be right now, and so this is something you'll have to deal with throughout September. If you have your natal Saturn in Taurus, then your sense of structure is tangible, embodied, and built to last. The Saturn in Pisces transit gently helps you dissolve overly rigid attachments to how things should be. The friction intensifies, though, later in the month with the hyper-analytical energy from Virgo around the solar eclipse, which will be opposing Saturn in Pisces. This can trigger a deep fear of imperfection, bogging you down into the details, because if things aren't solid and perfect, they feel like they might dissolve into chaos, which is not what you want. And so your discipline is looking for a more artful expression for whatever it is that you're pursuing. The trick is to apply your methodical nature to a sensory craft like gardening, cooking, pottery, art, where practical skill and soulful flowing creativity can merge beautifully. So look for opportunities that align with this month. If you have your natal Saturn in Gemini, your reality is structured by mental frameworks and logical categorization. With Saturn in a square from Pisces, at least by sign, these clear structures are being tested by deep ambiguity, or like the unknown might kind of freak you out a little bit. And the opposition from Saturn and Pisces from Virgo placements around the 21st intensifies this into a T-square, at least by sign, to your natal Saturn. And so maybe you're caught between the demand for meticulous analysis and the spiritual reality that defies sort of being categorized, which leaves you feeling mentally stalled, like a computer with a spinning wheel of death that just won't load. It might be kind of like your thoughts are loading, but they never fully load. And the discipline being asked of you is not intellectual, but it's about perception. The trick here is to deliberately schedule time to empty your mind, whether it's through meditation, a walk in nature, listening to music, because allowing your data processing brain to fully rest is more structurally sound than the actions you may take this month. If you have your natal Saturn in Cancer, your structures are emotional and protective, built on loyalty and care. Your natal Saturn forms a trine with transit Saturn in Pisces, at least by sign, which supports you in building more compassionate and fluid boundaries in your life. The challenge, though, comes later in the month as Virgo oppositions to this Saturn in Pisces introduces the anxiety of communicating these boundaries perfectly. You may have a clear gut level knowing that you need to say no, but your mind gets stuck in analyzing maybe the right way to phrase it, fearing you'll be misunderstood or cause hurt for others. And so this analysis paralysis can stop you from enacting necessary emotional protection. And so the trick is to honor the internal feeling of no as the complete action. A simple and clear "that doesn't work for me" is structurally sound statement. The feeling is the boundary, and if someone doesn't respect that, then maybe they need to reevaluate how they give their respect. With natal Saturn in Leo, your structures are built through creative will and confident self-expression, and so the challenge now is a three-way tension between archetypes. The Leo need for proud and creative recognition is being challenged with transit Saturn in Pisces, which brings the lesson of ego surrender, but also because of the oppositions to Virgo planets this month, It'll also demand the Virgo need for practical and humble service or creating systems. And so you might feel a deep creative call, but feel blocked by a sense that it's not selfless enough or useful enough. And this can trigger a crisis of creative purpose. And so the trick is to schedule non-negotiable time in your calendar for your soulful work, treating it with the same seriousness as a board meeting or a work meeting. And your responsibility is to the creative force itself, trusting that its value will be revealed in time. With natal Saturn in Virgo, your mastery is built through perfecting practical systems. You're very analytical by nature, and with Saturn in opposition and a powerful solar eclipse in your sign on September 21st, this is a peak moment of reckoning for you. The limits of your control in some way are kind of being tested. Maybe your own drive for perfection is in direct conflict with a reality that demands you to just let go. This can feel like an existential crisis if your systems fail. It may make you wonder, like, who are you and why are you even here if nothing you do works? And so the trick is to perform a systematic spiritual audit of your own rules. For each routine or responsibility or thing that you build, you may need to ask yourself, does this generate life-affirming energy, or does it drain it in service or anxiety in some way? Because it's a time to consciously dismantle the systems that have become punishing to you, and so listen to your anxieties this month. With natal Saturn in Libra, your structures are relational, built on principles of fairness and possibly justice as well. And these structures are now being tested because the Pisces influence with transit Saturn in Pisces introduces messy emotions and situations that may defy clear contracts. And at the same time, the Virgo influence will bring a hypercritical focus on past imperfections and flaws that you may have had or that may have happened. And so the tension is trying to maintain your ideal of perfect or harmonious balance in a world that is super imperfect and emotionally complex. You may find yourself obsessing over past relational failures. The discipline you are being called to do is to be compassionate about accounting for yourself and compassionate about your past mistakes. The trick is to consciously separate responsibility from blame. Acknowledge your part of a mistake with clarity and then deliberately release the burden of the parts that you were never meant to carry, and then move on to a better way of being. If you have your natal Saturn in Scorpio, then your structures are deep, resilient, and maybe hidden at some points. Saturn's harmonious trine from Pisces, at least by sign to your natal Saturn, provides a powerful opportunity to build a disciplined spiritual or psychological practice. And the sextile to Virgo planets later this month encourages you to bring this deep work into a practical, serviceable, actionable form. And so the productive tension here is that the Scorpio instinct can be to hoard deep knowledge or keep it secret so that you can use it in just the right way. But the Virgo influence urges you to refine it and make it useful for others in a humble and tangible way. And so the trick is to ask, how can the psychological goal that I've mined in private be refined into a practical tool that can genuinely serve others? This is about moving from personal power to selfless service. With natal Saturn and Sagittarius, your very structures are your beliefs, or at the very least, they're built on them. And with Saturn in a hard square from Pisces, at least by sign, which is where transit Saturn will be at this time, the coherence of your entire philosophy is being challenged by the unknown and maybe a sense of doubt. The opposition from Saturn and Pisces to the Virgo planets later this month will technically create a T-square to your Saturn, at least by sign, and that pits your responsibilities to become an expert at something against the private crisis of faith. You might feel immense pressure and imposter syndrome in whatever it is that you do, needing to have all the answers while privately grappling with super deep uncertainty that makes you question everything. And so the discipline you are learning is that of not knowing everything. The trick is to consciously adopt a beginner's mind and release the heavy responsibility of having to be an expert, because true wisdom comes in knowing what you don't know, and this can be something you can use to your advantage. With Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn is your ruling planet. So you structure reality through discipline and tangible achievement or tangible building in some way. Saturn's transit through Pisces, though, offers a supportive opportunity to make those structures more compassionate but also more flexible. And the opposition from transit Saturn to Virgo planets later this month actually forms a harmonious grounding trine to your natal Saturn. You're going to be trining the Virgo eclipse, you're going to be trining all the Virgo planets, and so this is a gift. When the wider world feels like it's dissolving into a little bit of chaos, you can find stability in detailed work or practical skills or being of service or doing something that's very rooted in reality. And the nuance is to not simply hide in the details to avoid the larger lesson. The trick is to apply your natural discipline or your natural discipline style to intangible practices that honor the Piscean lesson at this time. Maybe commit to a 5-minute meditation with the same seriousness that you would a business plan. And so this integrates the need for structure with the lesson of surrender at this time. If you have your natal Saturn in Aquarius, your structures are ideological and collective. The transit creates a tension between the different modes of reality because your Aquarian structure is built on impersonal systems or innovating or rational ideals, and this is being challenged by the Piscean focus on personal empathy and situations that defy logic. But it's also being challenged by the Virgo demand to account for the messy, imperfect details of human reality. You might feel that your elegant theories are being complicated by irrational feelings or inconvenient facts that kind of break sort of what you're trying to build. And so the trick is to apply your objective systems thinking mind into these very subjects. Maybe ask, how can I redesign whatever system or thing that I'm trying to create to be both responsible and compassionate and focusing on the details? You want to kind of like create things that embody all three in whatever you do this month. And finally, if your natal Saturn is in Pisces, with Saturn returning back to its natal sign, aka Saturn return like 2.0, 3.0, I don't even know. Don't be scared though, but you are in a foundational 2-year review of your life's deepest commitments and fears. This is kind of like your final test. And the opposition from Virgo planets later this month, especially around the solar eclipse on the 21st, may create a direct confrontation between your internal work and the very concrete needs and feedback of the people around you. Maybe a partner or a boss or a critic may provide a stark set of feedback or a reflection of your own patterns, acting as a mirror for where your personal structures need a little bit of changing. And so the temptation is to see this person who's giving you the feedback as an adversary, but the trick is to not view anybody as an enemy this month, but as a structural engineer who's pointing out, sometimes with brutal clarity, by the way, the weak points in your foundation, but they're probably just doing it to help you. And so the feedback isn't about them. And even if somebody is trying to hurt you, which is the case sometimes, just know that you still have the power to not let it affect your emotions, but to use it as data. Remember that it's not an attack on you. It's more of like a data point or a diagnostic tool for you to do the work that is truly effective and useful to you.